Since this video is absolutely massive and spans tons of different topics, I've gone ahead and put timestamps in the description for better navigational purposes. If you want to jump straight to the super heavy demon section for some reason, you can, though I wouldn't advise it because this entire video is chock full of really interesting information. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Demons are technically fallen versions of sentient beings that have wandered the plains of hell for an untold number of years. As an entity travels amidst the horrors of the dark dimension, their soul begins to wither away. Over time, that essence is drained entirely, pooling into vast puddles of potent energy. The husk that's left behind then begins the process of becoming one of the many species of demons seen throughout hell. In other cases, the transformation can be much faster, even appearing instantaneous on the surface. How each body becomes the specific creature seen throughout hell is unclear. Some breeds are considerably more ancient and inhabited the fetid wastes long before their sinister turn to evil. Hell wasn't always a wretched and horrible plane. In fact, eons ago, it was a beautiful land known as Jakad. Eventually, the creator of this world became corrupted, and with this corruption came the downfall of the entire plane of existence. As time marched on, the rot within hell continued to eat at its people, until they became the first of demonkind. Before delving into specific species of demons, I need to briefly explain the weirdness of subspecies. When discussing Earth taxonomy, we usually classify animals that possess notably similar traits into a singular group. They're not exactly the same type of fauna and generally can't interbreed, but they're similar enough that they don't warrant their own category. We call these subspecies. There are different subspecies of demons, some of which are extremely obvious thanks to their drastically differing forms. For example, these are both cacodemons. In other cases, individuals only vary slightly in appearance, and due to the ever-shifting nature of hell, it's unclear whether these traits are distinct enough to set them apart from the others, or simply phenotypes. Take these two different imps as an example. A phenotype is essentially a group of genetic variances that give each individual their own unique look. In humans, this manifests as things like eye, hair, or skin color. In demons, well, we simply don't know how this works. So for the sake of brevity, if a demon doesn't already have an expressed subspecies name, I'm going to place each version in its own subcategory. If it appears in a game and has a different appearance, then it gets its own label. It's completely possible that the visual changes we're seeing do not represent distinct subspecies, but again, I think it's best to separate them just in case. I've given each era its own name, but bear in mind that these aren't official designations, they just sound better than referring to a creature as a Doom 3 Cacodemon, for example. If a demon has the ancient subname, that means I'm referring to the classic appearances of a creature, as in their designs in Doom 1993, Doom 2, the Doom comic, and the Doom RPGs. The term Resurrected is referring to a variant encountered in Doom 64. Stygian will be used for the denizens of Doom 3, its DLCs, and Doom Resurrection. Advanced will be used to describe demons seen in Doom 2016 and Doom VFR. Darkened is used to refer to creatures pictured in Doom the Dark Ages. Eternal is used for, well, if you can't figure that out, you might need to go work on your basic problem-solving skills instead of watching this video. Alright, with that out of the way, Let's discuss the first entity. Banshees are disgusting, animate blood bubbles with similar traits to lost souls. Much like their flaming compatriots, they can fly, attack by hurling their bodies at their victims, and erupt like fleshy grenades, causing severe damage. It's unclear how they're created or if the process is similar to the formation of lost souls, but either way, they shouldn't be underestimated. Alone, they may not cause much damage, but in large groups, they'll overrun and eventually eliminate their target with their own eviscerated guts. Their name originates from the anguish-ridden wail they emit upon laying eyes on a potential victim. Their bodies consist of a large blob, the center of which is dominated by a distorted human face. Perhaps this visage represents the final expressions each individual made just prior to their conversion into banshees, a miserable mix of malice and pain. Fortunately, they at least go down easy. Just be careful you're not too close when landing the killing blow. Canines are dogs or wolves that have been converted and corrupted into fighting for demonic forces. It's unclear whether or not these are naturally occurring in the Dark Dimension or if they only exist through some kind of possession process, but based on some notes left behind by UAC scientists, it's likely the latter. For all intents and purposes, they are what they appear to be, mimicking the behaviors and fighting styles of their earthly counterparts. Thanks to their sharp teeth, powerful jaws, and most likely a penchant for eating human flesh, they can be quite dangerous. Through the use of specially made UAC dog collars, they can be essentially mind-controlled and influenced to fight for whoever equipped them with it. This seems to suggest a suitably low level of intellect and willpower, as most attempts to weaponize demons are met with less than positive outcomes. The weakest variant is known as a hellhound, but tougher subspecies called demon wolves and Cerberus have also been encountered. Another strange variety only exists in the presence of another demon called a marauder. They can be summoned by their twisted masters at will, and for some reason they're slightly translucent. When I say the word cherub, you probably picture cute little fat angels with instruments, or perhaps a bow and arrow. Not this ugly bastard. Though small and somewhat unassuming thanks to their childlike visage, they can be quite deadly. These lightning-fast creatures first lure you in with their best impression of a human infant. Once your defenses are lowered, they spring up from the ground, revealing their true nature. Their faces may appear helpless, but their razor-sharp chitinous claws prove otherwise. 4 small diaphanous wings are affixed to the creature's small frame, allowing them to flit through the air with alarming alacrity. They have no legs. Instead, their lower halves consist of a bizarre green abdomen that resembles something you'd see on an insect. Their solid black eyes are devoid of any childlike wonder, and their mouths are filled with rows of pointed, dagger-like teeth. Are these creatures literally human babies, corrupted and converted into cherubs, or is this simply a hunting tactic akin to earthbound flies that look like bees to avoid being eaten? The answer is unclear, but either way, exceptionally disturbing. The one thing these nasty buggers have taught me is that the fastest way to put a fussy baby to sleep is with a bit of buckshot to the face. Encountered prolifically throughout the Sentinel Hell Wars were demonic soldiers, which might be a type of zombie, but given the considerable lack of information regarding their origins, it's not exactly clear. These low-level creatures serve as expendable cannon fodder for Hell's armies, typically deployed in large groups in an attempt to overrun their enemies. Their bodies are covered in armor, and affixed to their arms are guns, capable of shooting small projectiles and slightly more dangerous balls of fire that are connected together via a chain of infernal energy. Shield soldiers also exist and appear in 2 variations. Some have protective devices made of dread steel, an alloy created in the volcanic pits of hell. They're capable of sending forth a ghostly manifestation of their shield that acts as a damage-dealing projectile. In other cases, they opt for more technological devices composed of energy rather than metal. Chain gunner soldiers are similar to their shielded brethren, especially considering they too have a similar device. Their choice of weaponry is far deadlier, however. I'm sure you can tell based on their names that they wield an exceptionally deadly chain gun that can not only output a barrage of bullets to harm their enemies, but it also hurts them too. This burden of never-ending torment instills extreme aggression within them, for which the only solace is a torrent of gunfire. Typically seen atop Darkened pinkies are archer soldiers. Their magical crossbows don't shoot arrows, but rather a kind of infernal energy-based projectile. Gargoyles are quite similar to imps in both their role and how they function, the primary difference being the addition of 2 bat-like wings that sprout from the creature's back. Originally, these beasts were native to an Argentine world, but have since been corrupted by the forces of Hell. They're fast, and thanks to their ability to fly, typical defensive structures are easily circumvented. Not only can they take to the skies, but they're also able to channel some kind of demonic energy into projectiles, similar to imps in nature. Their melee attacks are also quite devastating, utilizing twin arm blades that seem to be infused with a source of infernal power. The most interesting portion of their anatomy is their lower jaw, which splits into 2 additional mandibles, like a hellish version of Halo's Sangheili. In some cases, this part of their body is swapped for a metallic replacement, either functioning as a prosthetic or an enhancement. Ghouls are very similar to lost souls on the surface. They're airborne, and their bodies consist entirely of a skull with 2 horns jutting out of their foreheads. Again, much like lost souls, ghouls seem to emit their own unique form of propulsion. Instead of fire, it appears to be a kind of electricity that glows a bright yellow. This energy can also be channeled into small projectiles that they fling at their targets relatively frequently. They move differently than lost souls and don't rely on suicidal tactics, suggesting an increased level of intelligence. They're a bit weaker than their dumber cousins, but for what they lack in health, they make up for in movement. The secrets behind their creation have yet to be unveiled. Hellraisers are a bipedal humanoid demon most well known for the large biological gun fused to one of their limbs that takes the term firearm a bit too literally. This strange body part is mostly composed of cartilage and can unleash a devastating beam of potent hell energy. Unlike many other denizens of the Dark Dimension, these creatures are quite capable at battlefield strategy, retreating and flanking whenever applicable. In order for one of these annoying adversaries to be created, a Hellraiser parasite must first find a suitable host. What this larval stage looks like isn't entirely clear, but it's likely that it's quite similar to the creatures that become Hellguards, another entity I'll elaborate on later. How long the transformation process from whatever they were before to eventual Hellraiser remains a mystery. The material that seems to calcify around certain parts of its body is far more resistant to extreme temperatures, perfect for the planes of oblivion and for withstanding the blistering heat contained within them. Imps are one of the most prolific denizens of the demonic plane. Their relatively small, leathery bodies are typically covered in bone-like protrusions that don't really seem to serve any obvious purpose. Each of their hands is equipped with razor-sharp claws that they often use to slash their prey. These talon-like mitts can also be used to hang from surfaces or make vertical ascents with relative ease. They choose to be ambulatory bipedally, but occasionally crawl along the ground quadrupedally as well. In some instances, they can be surprisingly acrobatic, leaping great distances to attack their quarry. If they're unable to get up close and personal, they channel energy from the very depths of hell itself, producing a superheated plasma projectile that they then fling forth. As the energy builds, nearby objects and bits of debris get sucked into the center of the soon-to-be fireball, almost akin to a black hole, which aids in the attack's destructive potential. Advanced and eternal imps in particular are capable of charging this even longer to produce a much larger, deadlier glob of plasma. Thanks to their limited intelligence, they're often deployed as cannon fodder foot soldiers by the more powerful creatures of the Dark Realm. They don't seem to mind though, as their bloodlust and desire for pain is their only real driving force. Weaker and stronger versions of the ancient variant exist in the form of implings and imp lords, respectively. 2 special subspecies were created by the Mother Demon, a creature I'll explain later, when she resurrected the fallen demons defeated by Doom Guy in the original conflicts. The standard resurrected kind behaves mostly the same as its original counterpart, aside from a marginal increase in both strength and viciousness. The other, however, is far deadlier. Nightmare imps are hyper-aggressive, purple fireball-wielding beasts that are faster, output more damage, and are harder to see when compared to their standard counterparts. Fortunately, they react to a belly full of lead in much the same way. Stygian imps are quite interesting due to their much more distinct body structure, the most notable difference being the presence of 10 eyes instead of 2, suggesting that this particular subspecies dwells in the darker depths of hell. Interestingly, they seem to be unbothered by exposure to the harsh, semi-pre-terraformed Martian atmosphere, but whether or not this ability is exclusive to Stygian imps in particular is unclear. They also come in one other form, the Stygian Hellborn imp. Their behavior is identical to their brethren, but their skin is a noticeably different hue. I suppose it's possible that these imps are the same subspecies, simply having lost the first few layers of their epidermis in the fires of evil, but given the fact that their biology is tailored to such an environment, I imagine they'd at least have a minor resistance to hellfire. leading me to believe this is a distinct variation. In some instances, when an imp is killed, their bodies are flung deeper into the hotter portions of the dark dimension. After an unspecified amount of time in this superheated area, they emerge stronger than before. Their flesh becomes tempered by the extreme heat, hardening into a stone-like exoskeleton that renders them impervious to most attacks. The only way to break through is excessive blunt force, or a rapid succession of vibrations, both of which will cause their newfound armor to crack. The time spent in the burning abyss seems to imbue them with newfound power as well, allowing them to rapidly spin their bodies in a ridiculous-looking display of pinball-like destruction. Darkened imps were recorded during the Sentinel Hell Wars, and for the most part behave identically to their advanced and eternal brethren. The only real difference is their disgusting hair and the ability to throw projectiles that not only cause damage, but also block bullets. Darkened stone imps are virtually the same as eternal stone imps, aside from, once again, their vile locks of hair. This variant was created by Prince Azrak and his forces, rather than some kind of naturally occurring phenomena. The process is quite similar when compared to eternal stone imps, as their bodies are cast into a specialized biomatter mixture that causes their flesh to harden, while simultaneously sending them into a state of unbridled rage. Stalker imps are the tallest and one of the deadliest subspecies. This particular variety originates from the Great Steppe region of Hell, and in general, they're considerably more intelligent than others within their genetic family. Interestingly, they are very similar in appearance to archviles, suggesting some kind of evolutionary link between the two species. Like all other imps, they're able to channel projectiles of hell energy, but in their case, these arcs of deadly infernal power have tracking capabilities, and will often curve towards their intended targets, almost as if the energy itself is sentient. Though they may be quite smart, their lack of self-preservation, superheated talons, and dashing ability makes them ideal foot soldiers for the front lines of Hell's armies. Deadlier still are the Nightmare Stalker imps. Unlike standard Nightmare imps, these were not created by the Mother Demon, but rather they were forged through an unholy union between Hell and an altogether different and mysterious plane of existence, simply known as the Cosmic Realm. Through some kind of unknown ritual, cultic psychomancers were able to render their flesh somewhat translucent. Perhaps this suggests that invisibility is not a natural trait found within Hell, but rather an ability siphoned from the somehow more mysterious cosmic realm. It's also possible that the dark forces responsible for the creation of these creatures took inspiration in the Mother Demon's work. Whatever the case may be, the danger posed by this breed of imp cannot be understated. Lost souls are vile kamikaze beings that wander the wastes of hell and occasionally the earthly dimensions. These demons are simple creatures that stay aloft by means of an unknown propulsion system. In most cases, their bodies are nothing but a skull, attached to which are two large horns. Their forms are bathed in an endless hellfire that burns bright, especially when pursuing prey. Like many other demons, lost souls originate from the suffering of human beings. Each damned individual that finds their way into hell is forced into slave labor. Those that escape eventually transform into these airborne atrocities. This, along with their lack of intelligence and their overall weakness, means they're some of the most reviled creatures in hell. When they find a human being, they fling their bodies into them, typically causing severe damage to both their target and themselves. The goal of this strange attack is to self-destruct and attach their non-corporeal form to the being they were trying to weaken. Perhaps this behavior is born from the loss of their original forms and represents a longing to be truly human once again. Stronger and weaker versions, simply referred to as phantoms and nightmares, also exist, though the mechanics behind their increased strength is unclear. The Mother Demon created a special variant of Lost Soul as well by resurrecting the corpses left behind by Doom Guy during his initial conflicts. These guys are, of course, a bit meaner than they used to be. Stygian Lost Souls are exceptionally unique, not only due to their appearance, which is far more human than their ilk, but also with how they're created. In some instances, it seems as though particularly intense levels of hell energy can instantaneously transform an individual into a lost soul, skipping the longer process they normally undergo. When this happens, the head of the soon-to-be transformed rapidly decays before snapping away from the rest of their body. This is how the Stygian variety seems to take shape. Forgotten Ones may very well be the same subspecies as Ancient Lost Souls, but without any direct confirmation, I decided it would be best to separate them, just in case. Darkened Lost Souls are virtually identical in behavior as every other version I've already discussed. The only real difference is purely aesthetic and even still quite minor. Darkened Lost Souls have also been observed in much larger forms as well, but the only thing that sets them apart from the others is their size. I'm sure you could probably guess based on their moniker, but maggots are absolutely revolting. These two-headed, mostly quadrupedal demons are extremely fast and prefer to make use of their large hands to slash at their targets. I say mostly quadrupedal because each sports a grotesque fifth limb sprouting awkwardly between the two on its right side, giving them a lurching, disjointed gait. Emerging from their sphincter-like mouths are long black tongues that seem to taste the air, much like a snake from our home planet. It's possible that these sensory organs are used in much the same capacity, picking up particles in the atmosphere to clue them in on the location or presence of potential prey. Atop their backs are two fleshy growths, sprouting from which are an array of jagged, bony structures. These strange anatomical oddities can be flexed and straightened at will, a behavior that is often observed while the creature remains idle. What exact purpose these serve isn't clear, but whatever the case may be, it is deeply unsettling to witness. Fortunately, they're quite weak and can be put down by weapons with very little stopping power. Seekers are completely non-hostile and are seemingly incapable of attacking. Instead, they outfit the capabilities of another species of demon, maintaining some kind of symbiotic relationship. They provide protection for the Guardians of Hell, an entity I'll talk more about later, as well as seek out prey for the much larger creatures. What the Seeker receives out of this exchange is unknown. Not all Guardians of Hell have Seekers aiding them, either. So it's possible that this friendship is much rarer or even unique to one particular Guardian. These exceedingly strange creatures have a single spotlight attached to what appears to be their foreheads. Its purpose seems to be to easily locate prey for the Guardian of Hell they're connected to. They remain aloft by mysterious means, much like lost souls, banshees, and ghouls. Their bodies are mostly a large brain, affixed to which is a tail and a few horn-like protrusions. Very little is known about these creatures, but suffice to say, despite their inability to inflict harm, seeing one means you're in great danger, as a Guardian of Hell is likely not far behind. Ticks are small, spider-like creatures with extremely fragile bodies, making them one of the least dangerous demons to encounter. At first glance, they appear to have an arachnoid form, but they actually possess 6 legs rather than 8. Each of their limbs is segmented by 3 joints, all of which terminate into a somewhat flattened point. Their faces are somewhat humanoid thanks to the presence of semi-normal eyes and a very human-like nose. Their mouths differ, however, resembling something more akin to a crab's mandibles. They may be easy to dispatch, but they typically attack in packs, effectively bolstering their danger potential. Trites share many similarities with ticks. Small forms, weak body structure, and a penchant for attacking in groups are the most notable commonalities. They're noticeably different in appearance, however, and are actually a bit slower than their cousin. Upon initial inspection, they appear to be an upside-down human head with 6 legs attached to it. Looking closer reveals this is far from the truth. Their faces are extremely reminiscent of the Vagary, another demon that they seem to have a connection to, made obvious by the creature's 12 eyes and human-like nose. Their legs are considerably thicker than a tick's, but don't let that fool you. Surprisingly, they're not any tougher. Sticking out of what would be their neck if they were human is a series of vertebrae that bears more than a passing resemblance to a spinal cord, perhaps suggesting they're created in the same fashion as Stygian lost souls. They're capable of spinning a webbing that's not too dissimilar from Earth-based fauna. Perhaps this is utilized to ensnare prey or act as an early warning system when something makes contact with the material. They also look like one of the many forms that The Thing took in the 1982 movie with the same name. Not really relevant, just something I noticed. Vulgars are almost identical to Stygian imps in behavior, the primary difference being they prefer to move on all 4s rather than upright on 2 legs. They're also capable of summoning balls of superheated plasma, but the energy they channel to do so is green instead of the orange that imps conjure. Thanks to their preferred method of locomotion, they tend to be far more animalistic than similar species. This trait is further exemplified by their long, rigid tail, an appendage they no doubt use to impale their enemies. The structure of their cranium is very odd, not only because of the unusual shape, but thanks to the fact that they have no lower jaw. What they do have is a set of pincher-like digits that end in sharp points, but their exact purpose remains obscured. Attached to their torso is 4 additional, larger versions of the same kind of protuberance. Their eyes are somewhat self-illuminated as well, suggesting some kind of bioluminescence or perhaps a form of hell energy inside them akin to the Hellraiser. Think of these ugly assholes as demonic xenomorphs. I know, what a terrible combo. Wraiths, not to be confused with elemental wraiths, are squatty demons that appear to be closely related to gargoyles. Though they've never been observed flying, both of their arms seem to be a wing, each having a thin, leathery membrane that makes them look like a much larger, slightly more demonic version of a flying fox, the largest species of bat on Earth. Instead of gliding or soaring, they use them as weapons, stabbing anyone that gets too close with the sharp pointed bits located at the end of each extremity. Again, much like gargoyles, their lower jaws are split into two pieces that tend to splay outward when provoked. Their most frightening trait is their ability to channel some kind of hellish energy. This allows them to vanish into thin air, either teleporting small distances or simply rendering themselves imperceptible to the human eye. Stealth is their #1 form of attack, utilizing their disorienting ability to confuse their quarry. Nestled above their luminous yellow eyes is an unknown organ that takes the form of a black ovoid. Perhaps this unusual piece of anatomy is the source of their frightening abilities. Zombies are one of the most biologically diverse species of demon ever encountered, largely due to the fact that every individual is utilized in different ways, each dependent on their state of being prior to demonic corruption. Fundamentally, these monsters were formerly humans, their bodies having been twisted by raw hell energy. A type of necrosis eats at their internal organs, and in some cases their skin, but generally their brains remain intact. Despite this, for the most part, neural activity is limited or completely non-existent. Though they possess a low level of sentience, their actions are strictly rooted in basic, primal, and instinctive behaviors. Zombies crave human flesh, often feeding on each other or preferably a still living human. When left alone with no prey, they may enter a state of hibernation for days or weeks at a time. If a food source makes itself known, they will once again become ambulatory, attacking any sorry soul that gets too close with extreme territorial violence. Aside from eating each other or slipping into a coma, their hobbies include walking aimlessly and dragging bodies into a central location. Bizarrely, they will then perform silent rituals over the corpses, eventually birthing a gore nest, essentially a fleshy gate to hell. Their brains aren't active while performing these tasks, suggesting some kind of telepathic link with greater forces. Nothing stops them from this goal, either. The removal of limbs or the implantation of Pavlovian pain responders has no effect on their movements. Upon death, their bodies also serve as fuel for future gore nests. Though they don't personally make use of their brains, this particular organ seems essential for them to perform their purpose. In rare cases, the heads of zombies are destroyed and they're still able to prove a threat. Being cut off from their driving force suggests a lack of coordination, likely causing them to instead proliferate chaos rather than further some grand demonic design. The hell energy that triggers zombification appears to be smart in its metamorphosizing capabilities, as not all information is wiped from the minds of each former human. If they had a specific skill set that could be useful, it's retained. This seems to suggest that an extremely basic essence of what they used to be still resides within them, or at least any useful talents are preserved to better utilize their newly twisted forms. As a result, foot soldiers are generally slightly more intelligent than the shambling zombies encountered more prolifically. Before I mention some of the more specialized kinds of Walking Dead, let me first show you the dumber or less useful variants. Stygian zombies come in many shapes and sizes, from fatties to maintenance personnel. As mentioned before, sometimes they're missing their heads. Civilian, worker, and tech zombies are roughly the same as the Stygian variants, the most notable difference being their propensity to rip off hunks of their flesh and fling it at their prey. Possessed workers are former UAC employees that worked at one of their bases on the surface of Mars. The clothing they were wearing prior to corruption becomes fused with their flesh, likely due to the strength or form of hell energy they were exposed to. Possessed scientists are interesting looking as their faces have become devoid of most of their facial features. They no longer have eyes or a nose, instead they're replaced by a gaping hole in the center of their foreheads. Why this occurs is unclear. Earth zombies were once regular human beings that lived on our home planet. Their bodies now transformed into husks, thanks to the corruption and deception of the Dark Dimension. Cultist zombies are former humans that once worshipped the evil entities that eventually converted them into the mindless drones encountered throughout cultist bases. Unwilling are former humans found in the plains of hell itself and are used as slave labor, simple cannon fodder, or shrine worshippers, perhaps slightly bolstering the power of whatever demon they pray to. Hell zombies appear to serve the same purpose as Unwilling, but have a noticeably different visage. Much like possessed scientists, they lack any facial features aside from their mouths. Their heads are instead covered in strange finger-like ridges, and their bodies have begun developing jagged points across their exterior. Bony zombies are similar to Hell zombies and Unwilling. They appear to be weak and fragile, but don't let their appearance fool you. Their gaunt bodies are substantially tougher than most of their brethren. Though still lacking intelligence, the next few zombies have specialized niches and more unusual properties. As previously mentioned, the clothing an individual is wearing when they're exposed to hell energy can often be fused to their flesh. Another instance of this is the biosuit zombie, a slightly tougher variant thanks to the clothing that's become a sort of second skin. Possessed engineers are similar in that explosive tanks have been permanently affixed to their physical forms. Cue balls are basically the same scenario, making them exceedingly volatile. As a result, they should be dispatched with care. Morgue zombies aren't exactly stronger or unique on the surface, but their existence suggests reanimation of a deceased individual, rather than conversion or possession of someone that was alive at the time of transformation. Sawyer zombies are exceptionally ugly and dangerous thanks to their bulky frame and choice of weaponry, chainsaws. Bernie zombies are bizarre, faster, stronger former humans that seem to radiate intense internal heat. It's as if the fires of hell itself spew forth from the open wounds in their abdomens and upper bodies. Okay, onto the smarter zombies now, starting with the most basic. Less skilled soldiers such as former privates, lieutenants, or captains can still be worthy adversaries on the battlefield, retaining some of the knowledge of their training and combat prowess. Their skills were limited in life, and so they're also limited in this new twisted unlife. Shotgunners are much the same, but they pack a far deadlier punch thanks to their choice of weaponry. Assassins, commandos, and troops are even more dangerous due to their use of chain guns. One of the most terrifying of these former humans is the Shock Trooper. These are ex-elite, Doom Guy's old comrades. They remember tactics and come equipped with their own plasma rifles. When the Mother Demon resurrected the creatures from Doom Guy's first conflicts, she brought back zombie men and shotgun guys back into the fray. They're ever so slightly deadlier than they used to be. Much like shock troopers, Z-Sec personnel are far more capable warriors, possessing genuine combat strategizing capabilities. They've been known to flank, overwhelm, and use a variety of different death-dealing devices. Pistols, machine guns, and shotguns are some of the most prominent examples. They also have slight self-preservation techniques, as seen with the shield-wielding Z-Sec former humans. Interestingly, they even seem to communicate to each other through radio units for better combat strategizing. Certain UAC facilities contained more elite soldiers. When exposed to hell energy, these individuals become particularly deadly. Possessed soldiers' weapons have been grafted to their skin, making them highly deadly as a result, especially when they utilize their weapon's charged shot effectively. Possessed security are an even more specialized task force. As a result, they exhibit some of the most complex battlefield capabilities, quite similar to the Z-Sec soldiers I mentioned earlier. They also utilize protective devices, but a far more technologically advanced version that seems to make use of an energy-based protective surface instead of simple metal. Soldiers are corrupted humans that once fought on the front lines of Earth, possessing similar levels of danger compared to possessed soldiers. They too come in a shield-toting variant, and much like the Z-Sec individuals, they occasionally speak, though their voices are distorted versions of what they used to be. An extremely deadly variant called a Riot Soldier also exists. Their bodies are covered in a tough armor, but more importantly, they possess a near-impervious shield that courses with a power from a somewhat angelic plane of existence called Urdak. More on that later. Mecha zombies are much deadlier than their standard counterparts thanks to the inclusion of cybernetic enhancements. One hand is typically replaced with a blaster that can output a surprising amount of damage. Attached to their other hand is a series of razor-sharp metal claws, used when their adversary gets too close for gunfire. The deadliest form of zombie is referred to as a screecher, due to its unpleasant tendency to let out a blood-curdling scream upon its expiration. Once upon a time, these former humans worshipped an ancient hell cult, referred to as the Ra-Ultha Vatum. Little is known about this particular sect of hellish religion, but as one might expect, it was nothing but pure scum and villainy. Instead of receiving a boon for their devotion, those that would become screechers were tortured for millennia. This instilled a deep hatred within them, a sensation that eventually became a powerful energy that manifests as a purple aura and serves to invigorate any demon that happens to be nearby upon the creature's fall. On their own, they pose no real danger, but in the presence of stronger demons, their deadliness cannot be understated. One of the final variants of zombie are the ones pictured in the 1996 Doom comic. They're essentially the same kind of former humans encountered by Doom Guy in his original conflicts, but due to their slightly differing appearances, I figured I'd at least mention them briefly. Doom 2 RPG has a prequel comic that contains some weird-looking zombies too, but most of what I just said regarding the 1996 book applies here too. Once a person becomes a zombie, the spark of humanity that once flickered within them has been entirely extinguished. There is no cure. The only way to truly save them is by eviscerating the grotesque mockery of their once human form.
This is an ARC broadcast. As the mighty Slayer wages war on the forces of hell, we here at the Armed Response Coalition often wonder what goes on in the mind of our heroic savior. One of our highly trained field operatives was able to reach out to Doom Guy for comment during a moment of reprieve, and this is what he had to say.
Arachnotrons are one of the most bizarre-looking demons to have ever spawned in the Dark Dimension. As I'm sure you can tell, these creatures are about 50% inorganic material. Their 4 robotic legs carry a fleshy brain-like head across the battlefield, simultaneously firing plasma balls at anyone that gets in its way. How the ancient subspecies came to be isn't exactly clear, but it seems to be implied that they were built by a version of the UAC. A slightly more dangerous form of Arachnotron called a Mindweaver also exists, the primary difference being their weaponry, which is a chain gun instead of a plasma rifle. Though this distinction seems minor, I assure you it's not. This modification makes them exceedingly more difficult to take down thanks to the much higher rate of speed their weapons projectiles travel. A resurrected variant was also recorded, created by the Mother Demon as a response to Doom Guy's continuous slaughter of Hell's forces. They behave the same as the ancient subspecies, but they look a little different and are marginally tougher. The Eternal variant in particular was created by UAC scientists using DNA recovered from the original Spider Mastermind, a monstrous entity I'll explain later. What quote-unquote original means in this context is unclear, as many of the creatures were slaughtered by Doom Guy over the years. In an attempt to weaponize demonkind, a bioengineered version of the creature affixed to an impulse-controlled metallic chassis was created. Naturally, this process was then automated, but things went horribly awry at the factory. Big surprise. All of the workers and scientists were killed in some kind of accident, but the machines within continued to manufacture the beasts. The biggest difference between them and the other species is their lack of ugly little arms, the location of their weapon, their ability to climb walls or hang from ceilings, and the introduction of a grenade launcher. Darkened Arachnotrons appear to be the most organic out of all the different subspecies. Their legs are composed of flesh and bone instead of a mechanical chassis. Their choice of weaponry is an unholy mix of the Mindweaver and the Eternal Arachnotron, with their rear-mounted chain gun and grenade-launching capabilities. One other variant also exists and has been dubbed the Ballistatron thanks to its gun. This subspecies is almost always heavily armored and capable of dealing enough punishment to make a Spider Mastermind proud. For some reason, I can't seem to acquire the codex entries on either of these guys, assuming they even exist, so sadly I have no additional information to go on besides appearance and attack patterns. Cacodemons are easily one of the most well-known species in the infernal plane, likely due to the absurdity of their body shape. They're red, spherical meatballs with a cycloptic eye, giant mouth, an insatiable hunger, and the ability to effortlessly float through the air despite any obvious means of propulsion. Unless... Their guts appear to never fill, and when they open their mouths, it almost seems like a miniature black hole is revealed. I suppose this could explain their constant need to feed, but how exactly this would work from an anatomical standpoint is completely unclear. When hunting, they will relentlessly pursue their prey until they're close enough to crush them with their powerful jaws. If they're too far away, cacodemons are able to unleash a powerful ball of fiery energy that deals a hefty amount of damage. Surviving the initial heat wave means you've been inflicted with a psychotropic bile that is both necrotic and has a sedating effect that will temporarily slow its victim. Interestingly, the advanced and eternal variants have small, perhaps vestigial legs on their underside. Supposedly, most cacodemon subspecies resemble a kind of ancient demonic entity that has long since gone extinct, indicating that maybe these gluttonous globs may have evolved or spawned from their number. A few alternate color morphs of cacodemon exist in the form of Malraths and Wretched, but their behavior is otherwise unchanged. When the Mother Demon resurrected the cacodemons on the doomed Mars bases, she either intentionally or unintentionally altered their entire body structure. Though their silhouette is mostly preserved, 2 large claws now sprout from the creature's sides, granting them another form of attack that's exclusive to this variant of the species. They also have 2 large horns jutting from the top of their heads, perhaps outfitting them with yet another piece of biological weaponry. This subspecies also bears more than a striking resemblance to pain elementals, but more on them a little later. Another extremely different subspecies of cacodemon is the Stygian variety, but this version of the creature possesses a set of tentacle-like appendages that dangle from its underside. Also worth mentioning is its additional eyes, the presence of what appears to be a nose, and the weirdly obvious exposed brain on top of their heads. Colloquially dubbed the Cacospectre, this strange version of this species is exactly the same as the ancient cacodemon, aside from the fact that it's invisible. Perhaps this is an ability that certain kinds of their race can utilize, and that's why when a pinky was implanted with the optic nerve of a cacodemon, it eventually obtained a similar ability. In the end, it's impossible to say with certainty, as many find the idea of a cacospecter to be nothing but a story, or some kind of hellish mistake. One of the most unusual breeds of cacodemon are referred to as hybrids, thanks to the fact that they're a mixture of hellish denizens and a mysterious power. Originally, they were simple demons, but they were transformed through the use of arcane rituals performed by an entity known as the Witch. Since their conversion into their new forms, they've somehow become pieces of an immense and ancient hive mind of unknown origin. Their bodies are composed almost entirely of a large brain, which makes perfect sense considering their very thoughts provide sustenance for gods beyond. Their only goal is to consume more ideas, more memories, in an attempt to endlessly commune with the eldritch entities of the cosmic realm. Scarier still is the giant cacodemon. As their name suggests, these immense creatures are considerably larger than any other variant encountered. It's unclear whether or not these Goliath beasts are even related to the demons, or if they're strictly children of the cosmic realm. The unique thing about these creatures is that they don't have a final stage of growth. If allowed to survive, they would expand for centuries until they were eventually able to swallow entire planets within their gaping maws. Carcasses are another example of UAC aiding demonkind by creating all new breeds of heinous creatures for their armies. These somewhat fat pricks are actually corpses of fallen soldiers that have been affixed to 3 legs, an arm-mounted cannon, and a series of cybernetic implants that are capable of simulating living impulses within decaying tissue. These insults to the natural order are neither alive nor dead, instead existing in a state that sits somewhere between. Though they're not the toughest of creature and are easily dispatched when separated from their mechanical body parts, they're able to outfit other demons exceedingly well by deploying a wall of blue energy into battle. This force field behaves like a solid surface, blocking the attacks of its adversaries and, in some cases, killing them with splash damage from their own explosives. On top of this annoying ability, the area where the pelvis would be is a kind of gun that fires bursts of 3 energy-based rings at their attackers. Additionally, they can strike the ground with enough force to produce a minor infernal shockwave. The entire purpose of their being is to essentially give the dead another go, extending their usefulness beyond mortal life in a Frankensteinian state. Commandos, not to be confused with those red armored pricks from Doom Guy's original battles, are giant, muscular soldiers created through arcane rituals performed by UAC scientists like Malcolm Betruger. Formerly elite soldiers, their bodies have been transformed beyond a simple mindless drone, growing in not only height but also ferocity. I suppose you could make the argument that they belong in the zombie category, but due to their exceptionally altered forms and increased threat level, I felt it best to give them their own category. During the transformation process, it seems as though their upper bodies become too large to be contained within their shirt, but fortunately their fatigues generally stay on, which is the perfect transition for me to point this out. In some instances, one of the individual's arms becomes a long whip-like tentacle that it uses to attack its enemies. Their increased muscle mass and biological weaponry combine to create a creature that can run at frightening speeds and deliver a healthy dose of heaping calamari too. The only other variant that has been recorded retains both arms, which makes them marginally less threatening at first glance. Don't let this fool you though, as they instead wield deadly chain guns, effectively making them a much more dangerous assailant. Some Hell Knights seem to overlap with Barons of Hell, so it's possible that the two are subspecies of the same creature, but without more data, I'm unable to make that distinction. They're almost certainly related, but for the sake of this bestiary, I thought it best to separate them into their own entries. Ancient Hell Knights are tall bipedal beasts with goat-like legs, a hairy six-pack, 2 giant horns, and the ability to fling green hellfire at their targets. A weaker subspecies of Hell Knight called an ogre also exists, the only real difference being its skin tone and fireball color. Doom Guy killed ancient Hell Knights during his fight on the moons of Mars, and when the Mother Demon found their corpses, she gave them life once more. This made them ever so slightly tougher and a bit meaner too. The Stygian variety appears to be much larger than its brethren and is quite different in its overall appearance. Instead of hooves or hair, its body is covered in gray skin, and each of its massive legs terminates in giant clawed feet. They have no horns, instead their craniums are smooth. It's also worth noting these knights seem to lack eyes, perhaps implying they track their prey through smell or some other infernal instinct. Unsettlingly, a constant stream of saliva perpetually flows from their gaping maws, implying a strong and constant sense of hunger. Stygian Hellborn Knights are exactly the same as the previously mentioned variant, aside from a change in skin tone. Both of these subspecies are capable of flinging balls of plasma at their quarry as well, much like their smaller ancient counterparts. The advanced version is much smaller, but also staggeringly faster. Thanks to their lighter forms, they're able to leap great distances, often employing a deadly aerial slam attack on their enemies. Like the Stygian subspecies, they lack eyes, but don't seem to have issues navigating any landscape. Ancient tablets retrieved from the Great Steppe within Hell speak of this demon's pedigree and how they served under an entity known as the Great Serpent during the First Age. Eventually, this mysterious being was defeated, and the surviving Hell Knights were placed into arenas for combat where they would slaughter any creature unfortunate enough to be pit against them. Eternal Hell Knights are identical in behavior, but these gnarly bastards actually have eyes. Same goes for Darkened Hell Knights, except their skin is quite different. For some reason, it resembles a tiger. It's also worth mentioning that neither Advanced, Eternal, nor Darkened Hell Knights seem to be capable of conjuring projectiles like some of their cousins. The deadliest form of this creature is none other than the Dread Knight, an unpleasant being born from the sick minds of human cultists at the UAC. Each of the beast's arms have been outfitted with large energy blades that not only can be used to slash at their quarry up close, but can also fling arcing projectiles if need be. In some instances, they can employ a kind of area of effect, a lingering cloud of infernal energy that inflicts pain on whoever stands within it. Thanks to its augmentations, a constant flow of epinephrine flows through them, creating a state of unbridled adrenaline-fueled hatred. When a Dread Knight scores a kill, it's flooded with artificial dopamine, serving as the only brief respite in its otherwise unbroken rage. Though Dread Knights are likely still the deadliest subspecies, Battle Knights certainly give them a run for their money. On the surface, these elite warriors are merely Hell Knights, except they're equipped with an axe, armor, and a whole slew of new attacks. Once their protective clothing is removed, they can still be dangerous adversaries, thanks to the fact that they have more health than their compatriots. Hell tanks are created using the remains of colossal titans. These sentient machines have no operator and are instead directed by evil hell sorcery to prowl the battlefield. They may be quite large and seemingly dangerous as a result, but their slow to charge projectiles make dodging any incoming volley surprisingly easy. If you're able to reflect one of their green bullets back at them, they immediately crumble. Instead of driving across landscapes on treads like a human-made tank, they utilize a magical force to hover slightly above the ground. One end of their bodies has a rather large skull, but it's unclear if this serves any purpose beyond a cosmetic design. Hell ships are yet another disgusting blend of technology and organic materials. Much like tanks, these living vehicles can be dangerous in the right circumstances, but on their own don't really pose a serious threat. They will often engage in dogfights as potentially harmful aerial units, but they're also often seen fleeing from the battlefield, carrying vast amounts of resources in tow. It's not clear if the purpose of carrying these items is personal piracy or to further a greater demonic agenda. Mancubi, or Mancubus, if we're talking about several, are a breed of morbidly obese demons with the obvious habit of gorging themselves on literally anything they can find. Instead of quickly passing their meals like a human might, their diet instead rots within their digestive system. This gluttony can be their undoing, unintentionally making the skin around their stomachs thin and easily pierced by weaponry. Their organs are highly volatile and will often explode when exposed, launching their toxic innards onto their attacker. Their primary source of damage output are their arm-mounted cannons that spew different kinds of projectiles depending on the subspecies. Their secondary form of attack is the use of chemical warfare. Each individual wafts a dizzying scent of decaying corpses mixed with a healthy dose of head cheese, an odor that would overwhelm even the strongest of constitutions. When they eventually become too large from their habit of gluttonous overconsumption, their bodies collapse. Their form then provides nourishment, a disgusting feast for younger Mancubi. A few color variations very similar in appearance to the ancient variety also exist, each with slightly differing strength levels. The Behemoth, for example, is slightly more fragile than the standard version, while the Druge is a bit tougher. The weapons that are affixed to a lot of these bloated creatures are technological in nature, suggesting they were outfitted by demons or human cultists. In these cases, their guns shoot rockets or fireballs. A resurrected version also exists and has a slightly differing appearance. Most notably, they have horns now, as well as the usual enhancements granted by the Mother Demon. Stygian Mancubi appear to be functionally the same as the other variants I've shown you. The only real oddity is the presence of several tentacles hanging from where their mouths should be. The most bizarre subspecies is the Advanced Mancubi. As they mature, they each don a set of armor, but their insatiable appetite invariably causes them to eventually outgrow it, leaving their distended bellies exposed. As they grow older, a chitinous growth begins to appear on each hand that forms into a tube-shaped structure. The flesh beneath then begins to decompose and a disgusting chemical reaction starts to occur. The goo that is created through this process is exceedingly volatile and can be discharged at will to be launched at frightening speeds. One other thing worth noting is that this version of the Mancubi is the only one that has a single eye instead of two. I couldn't tell you why, but it's an interesting distinction nonetheless. Advanced Cyber Mancubi are yet another UAC-made demon. Likely thanks to some disturbing fascination, a team of scientists outfitted several of the vile beasts with a superior weapons system that results in a less flammable projectile, but what it lacks in temperature, it makes up for in distance and poisonous bite. I guess this team wasn't completely depraved, as they at least attempted to give the fatties some armor that actually covered their disgusting forms, but no matter what, each Mancubi would eventually outgrow the gear. The Eternal Cyber Mancubi appears to function the same as its advanced counterpart. It's at least worth mentioning that design blueprints for the creature indicate that a toxin is siphoned from its spinal gland to better capitalize on their weapon's destructive potential. Whether or not this was used in the same way for the advanced variety isn't exactly clear. Darkened Mancubi function the same as every other variant. Their appearance is quite similar too. Interestingly, they are known to carry large metallic devices on their backs that seem to feed into their weapon system, though I'm unsure of its exact purpose. Pinkies, sometimes referred to as just demons, are burly, mostly two-legged creatures. Their odd name stems from their vibrant skin tone and the fact that they don't really have a proper designation among other hellspawn. Their behavior closely matches more relatable fauna, like a bull, a shaved gorilla, or maybe a cocaine-addled grizzly bear. That being said, these mindless beasts are far tougher than the creatures they might be compared to. Like any of their hellish roommates, they display increased aggression towards people, almost as if hatred towards humankind is hard-coded into every demon species. Both the advanced and eternal variety have a large bony plate on their foreheads that is frequently used as a battering ram. When a target is chosen, their powerfully muscular hind legs send them on a collision course with their prey. If their quarry manages to miraculously survive the force of the impact, their massive jaws and claw-covered hands will finish the job. Once charging, they're unable to shift direction or come to a stop, meaning they will often careen off of ledges or slam into hard surfaces. The front of their bodies may be heavily guarded, but their backsides are much softer, leaving them especially vulnerable to flanking attacks. In Hell's armies, they're often used as an initial salvo to soften any defenses of those that their demonic overlords are attempting to consume. Many bite mark-ridden pinky cadavers have been recovered from Hell, suggesting that they're not just used as foot soldiers, but perhaps a food source as well. Bull demons are weaker than ancient pinkies and seem to come in varying sizes, some the same as the previously mentioned subspecies, while the others are much smaller. Belphegors are even tougher, blue versions of the creature. Resurrected pinkies are basically the same as they were prior to their deaths at the hands of Doom Guy, minus a slight increase in their destructive capabilities. A far more terrifying subset of pinky is the Spectre. They possess all of the same skills as the standard breeds, except they're invisible. Ancient Spectres, Belphegor Spectres, Resurrected Spectres, Advanced Spectres, and Eternal Spectres are all the kinds that have been recorded. Belphegor Spectres are virtually identical to their ancient brethren, except they're a bit tougher. The biggest difference between the advanced, eternal, and perhaps ancient specters is the method of their creation. Advanced specters, in particular, were the result of human meddling. Idiotically, UAC scientists thought it would be a good idea to transplant the optic nerve of another species from Hell, the Cacodemon, into a pinky. This gave the creature limited psionic abilities, and it eventually learned how to make itself transparent. Inevitably, it escaped its human confinement thanks to the carelessness of its creators and went on to pass its newfound abilities onto its offspring. Eternal Spectres, on the other hand, were created through the use of an arcane form of black magic, utilized by a sect of warlocks that sought to rebel against the evil archdemons that ruled over Hell. Using a long-lost form of sorcery, they gave many abominations form. Chief among them was the Eternal Spectre. It's unclear whether or not this was how ancient specters also came to be, but that seems to be the most likely explanation. Included in Doom Guy's original incident reports was the strange mention of yet another form of the creature, simply dubbed a Nightmare Spectre. This exceptionally deadly subspecies is extremely rare. As a result, many dispute its existence altogether. It's said that instead of being strictly transparent, the Nightmare Spectre has a greenish hue and attacks with an even greater ferocity. The nature of its origin, or whether any other members of its race exist, is unclear. Perhaps it was simply a hellish abnormality, a mutation, or maybe a secret, far more dangerous subset is hidden somewhere in the nearly endless plains of hell, waiting to be let loose on unsuspecting victims. Stygian pinkies are by far the most bizarre subspecies of this particular demon, largely thanks to their altogether different appearance. Unlike almost every other variant, Stygian pinkies are quadrupedal, the back halves of their bodies consisting of a set of metallic, cybernetic legs. This helps solidify that the denizens of hell don't just use magic and sorcery to create new monstrosities, but machines and technology as well. Unless this was another UAC creation, but that's not exactly clear. This hideous pinky has no eyes or nose. Instead, the front of its face is dominated by a set of massive jaws that seem to protrude from a larger orifice. It also appears to have floppy ears on the side of its grotesque head. Darkened pinkies are also very different looking when compared to all of the other variants of these creatures. Like the Stygian subspecies, these quadrupedal monsters have a very strange jaw structure, possessing a set of additional tooth-covered mandibles. I imagine these act as weapons rather than serving as actual teeth for breaking down their food. Though their behavior is roughly the same, they're considerably larger than their brethren and far more mobile as well. Not only will they run forwards and smash their adversary with their horns and head, but they can dash to the sides as well. Another interesting trait exclusive to them is their tails, which end in a large pronged bone. They're often ridden into battle by demonic archers, but there's no real bond between the creatures. In some cases, they've been observed feasting upon their masters in the throes of battle. Prowlers are believed to be cousins of the Imp, and by my estimation are also closely related to wraiths. Again, not to be confused with elemental wraiths. Though they're considerably larger than both of their fellow demon species, the general structure of their forms closely resembles that of an Imp, especially the Stygian variety. Their abilities, however, are almost identical to the wraiths. Utilizing some kind of strange hell magic, they can instantaneously transport from one location to another, or make their bodies invisible to human eyes. Prowlers are yet another species that possesses a segmented lower jaw, a seemingly common hellish adaptation. They also have some of the greatest vision of any demonic entity, earning themselves the nickname the Night Stalker, thanks to their ability to see in the inkiest of blacks. They remain mostly solitary when hunting, foregoing the more typical demonic strategy of overwhelming with sheer numbers in favor of employing greater precision. Thanks to their skill set, they often strike their prey, retreat, and then repeat the cycle. The Eternal subspecies in particular also possesses a purple fireball attack that behaves similarly to any other plasma projectiles created by Hell's forces. The deadliest kind of prowler is the Cursed subspecies. Their bodies are structured the same as both advanced and eternal variants, but their skin tone has become a sickly green on account of the necrotic venom that drips from their haggard fingertips and likely resonates from inside them. This oozing rot is far more than a simple weapon. It's one of the most heinous forms of blood magic, and something that very few have learned to create. Somehow, certain prowlers originating from the deepest depths of hell have evolved to naturally produce this potent toxin. A single strike begins to curdle the blood of their victim, draining them of their very essence with each beat of their heart. The only cure is violence. If you're inflicted with this magic, killing the cursed prowler who struck you as quickly as possible is the only chance of survival. Revenants are one of the more deadly breeds of demons, largely thanks to their imposing size, surprising strength despite their lack of muscles, and of course, their shoulder-mounted explosive launchers. These deadly weapons fire a seemingly limitless supply of projectiles that have heat-seeking capabilities. Ancient Revenants in particular appear to be unique from other subspecies as they are created through the reanimation of the fallen. Essentially, sometimes when a demon dies, they're given a new shape, a fancy weapon system, and then returned to the front lines of Hell's endless conflicts. Slightly weaker subspecies also exist in the form of ghouls, not to be confused with the flying Fodder Demons with the same name, and fiends. In some cases, all three variants will explode upon their death, potentially eliminating their killers in the detonation. How Stygian Revenants are created is not known, but they do have a few notable differences in their appearance and structure. For one, their bodies are covered in a translucent layer of skin. For two, their eyes emit a subtle green glow. Advanced Revenants were made by the UAC using human beings. Some reports indicate that living individuals are used in this process, but others imply it occurs post-mortem. Perhaps it's a mix of the two? I can't say for sure. To begin the steps of their creation, 2 MLRBs, or multiple launch rocket batteries, are grafted to each shoulder, both of which are connected to a chip that's implanted in their brains. This allows them to not only fire the missile launchers attached to their bodies, but they can also control several mobility thrusters that function kind of like a limited-use jetpack. After the weapons are in place, each unfortunate individual selected for the program is hit with repeated barrages of hell energy. With enough exposure to this demonic force, proteins in their bones begin to mutate, causing their entire skeleton to expand. Eventually, it becomes too large to remain within its epidermis, emerging like a demented butterfly tearing out of a fleshy chrysalis. Several weeks later, the expansion ceases, resulting in a spooky, scary skeleton that towers up to 9 feet or 3 meters in height. Any exposed organs begin to decompose, finally resulting in the horrifying beast that is the Revenant. Eternal Revenants are created in much the same way. The only real difference is the presence of a few upgrades, the most notable being the inclusion of a frenzied state. Though they're unable to exist in that mindset forever, the danger posed during it is exceedingly high and forces them into uncontrollable, unrestrained bloodlust with only one goal: to inflict as much pain and suffering as possible. In rare cases, they seem to be placed in an almost lobotomized state, removing any of their normal agency. This form is referred to as a Revenant drone and is used as a sort of vehicle for slightly less demonic operators. By interacting with a mysterious interface, the user is able to project their consciousness into the body of the drone, effectively seeing through its eyes and taking control of its motor functions. This connection appears to be easily severed, but what might happen if the drone is killed while inhabited by a pilot's mind is unknown. Darkened Revenants are very different looking compared to every other subspecies of the creature. Though they're still ambulatory skeletons, their attire, weapon set, and means of traversal are very different. Thanks to their hood and scythe, they look very much like classical depictions of the Grim Reaper, a more than worthy comparison considering how dangerous they can be. Instead of using a jetpack for occasional bursts of flight, they hover above the ground indefinitely. Their projectiles are energy-based, each resembling a skull rather than the typical rockets seen used by other variants. Their most dangerous attack is their ability to become spectral for a brief period. During this time, their now non-corporeal bodies can't be harmed by traditional means. Instead, their own projectiles must be reflected back at them. Succubi, or succubus for plural, are humanoid monsters that aren't really anything like the mancubus that they share a naming convention with. Not much is known about this particular demon, but based on their appearance, they've been given a few technological enhancements. It almost appears as though a metallic skeleton sits beneath a layer of thinly stretched skin. Their right hands are entirely non-existent, having been replaced with a chainsaw. Of course, that's assuming this isn't somehow naturally occurring, akin to the advanced Mancubi's arm-mounted cannons. 3 different subspecies exist: Lesser, Greater, and Chainstrosity, each marginally more deadly than the last. Summoners don't look particularly scary at first glance, but their specialized skill set makes them an extremely dangerous adversary. Though they have arms and legs, neither are utilized in combat or movement. Instead, they choose to hover above the ground by means of an unknown kind of telekinesis. These deadly demons have an unprecedented connection to the powers of the Dark Dimension, allowing them to channel devastating waves of energy that can be used to either eliminate their target or instantly convert them into one of the possessed. This appears to be calculated as well, suggesting summoners decide who to convert and who to kill based on unseen factors. They also seem to be able to teleport short distances, or at the very least, dash at a blistering speed. Its most dangerous ability is where it gets its name from, as it can open a rift and call forth additional demons to aid in the killing of its target. Bizarrely, 2 growths sprout from their backs, almost resembling a set of fleshy wings, but they seem to be vestigial in nature. Studies of the creature's anatomy reveal notable similarities to imps, potentially indicating that they're a highly evolved version of the lesser demon. One other variant of summoner exists, and it's simply referred to as a spirit. When hordes of summoners were killed by the Doomslayer on Mars, the power of their hatred for him caused their essence to coalesce into a new ghostly form. This non-corporeal state means they're unable to directly interact with the physical world. Instead, they must parasitically attach to a host demon. Once inside, it takes complete control of the creature's nervous system while simultaneously imbuing it with additional vitality, strength, and speed. If the host dies, the spirit is ejected and must find another demon to inhabit in order to seek vengeance. Thanks to the fact that they have no physical form, conventional weaponry cannot harm them. Only concentrated energy-based attacks are able to burn away their twisted essence. Watchers are a very rare, very peculiar demon that take the appearance of a gnarled tree with a whip-like tail and 2 massive forearms. These gigantic limbs seem to be its primary means of locomotion, carrying itself on its quote-unquote knuckles, somewhat akin to gorillas on Earth. Their faces are devoid of any notable features, possessing nothing but a blackened void that emits utterly bizarre sounds while it's hunting. 3 versions of the monster exist. In order of threat level from least to most, they are Briar, Standard, and Sentinel. Each variant prefers to use its large arms to swing at its attackers, or at a distance, strike the ground and summon forth jagged roots beneath their prey. Whiplashes are lightning-fast female demons that have no legs, instead opting to employ a far more unsettling form of locomotion: slithering. Generally considered to be scavengers, these stealthy demons immediately became a fixation for certain members of the UAC. Many attempts to capture the creatures failed, but eventually they were successful. What did they do with their new pets? Well, they surgically grafted cybernetic augmentations onto their bodies that were designed to bolster their strength and death-dealing potential, of course. Effectively functioning as pressure units in Hell's armies, whiplashes are able to quickly dart into melee range of their target, at which point they reveal a set of retractable whips that are concealed in their arms. These have a surprisingly long range and output a staggering level of damage. Oftentimes, they're used as a means of traversal, assisting the creatures in getting up or down higher ledges. Like many other demon species, they're capable of striking the ground with immense force, creating a wave of damage-dealing infernal energy. Only 3 variants have been recorded: the Eternal subspecies, a Darkened type that's devoid of UAC meddling, and an Invisible variant. These imperceptible monsters have unofficially been dubbed Whip Specters. Are you troubled by your coworkers' strange rituals? Have you noticed a slight change in the environment? Have you personally encountered a mortally challenged individual? If the answer is yes, then don't wait another second. Call the professionals. Demon Busters. Our courteous and efficient staff will be on call 24/7 to assist you with all of your demonic elimination needs. We're ready to defeat them. Addendum hunters were originally a noble race of alien beast killers. Twisted by the forces of hell, their bodies and minds have been molded to fulfill a much more sinister purpose. Their shields are capable of enclosing them within an unbreakable bubble and launching waves of projectiles. Their weapons are imbued with an infernal force, allowing them to deal extra damage and increase its range via some kind of hellish energy projection. They're highly aggressive and strategic, filling a role that's similar to the Gladiator Demon. Eventually, Doom Guy caused them to go extinct, only for portions of their carcasses to be utilized in the creation of Doom Hunters much later. What these creatures were like prior to demonic corruption, or where exactly they came from, is unclear, but within the forces of hell, they are extremely capable fighters. It appears as though their skin is irritated near where their armor or mechanical prosthetics have been attached, implying they might have just recently been affixed to their bulky forms. Their belts are covered in the trophies of their victims, suggesting their pre-demonic hunting desires still exist to a degree. Strangely, stuck to their chest is a piece of metal with a single yellow eye, a design that's also repeated on their mechanical arm's elbow. Archviles are one of the most powerful and feared breeds of the infernal plane. Their humanoid appearance and small size compared to many other dark denizens belies their strengths, which consist of pyrokinesis and the ability to resurrect nearby fallen demons. Being able to control fire means that they can utilize it as a highly effective weapon, so long as they're able to maintain eye contact with their prey. They can channel the powers of hell magic greater than just about any other species, likely thanks to the fact that they're descendants of some of the oldest demons. They're also far more intelligent than most of their hellborn brethren, granting them the skill set to bend the minds of weaker demonic individuals. Several variants exist. The first of which I'll mention is called Infernus, and is a blue-skinned, slightly weaker variant when compared to ancient Archviles. The Polyons, on the other hand, are red and a bit tougher. The Stygian subspecies are mostly the same in how they function, simply possessing a slightly different appearance. It's not clear if they actually resurrect demons or simply summon them, but whatever the case may be, their death should always be a top priority. The Eternal variety is the deadliest of all, and coincidentally is also quite a bit larger. It's capable of summoning a wall of protective fire to mitigate incoming damage, and much like summoners, they also seem to be able to call forth reinforcements of varying danger levels. Much like the Stygian subspecies, it's not really clear if they possess the ability to reanimate the dead, as they've only been recorded summoning. They can also create large patches of fire and quote-unquote teleport short distances like prowlers or summoners. It's possible that they're utilizing a special kind of infernal magic called Hell Time to achieve this effect, but more on that later. If an archvile is encountered, all other demons should become secondary to its destruction. If left unchecked, they will resurrect or summon even the most deadly of super heavy demon varieties to create a truly overwhelming deluge of hatred and evil. It's possible that the Baron of Hell shares a genetic lineage with Hell Knights, given some of their subspecies have an almost identical appearance, but I thought it best to put them in their own categories just in case. The Ancient subspecies looks remarkably similar to the Ancient Hell Knight. Goat legs, hairy six-pack, horns, fireball flinging, the works. The main difference is their skin is red. Regardless, they're far tougher and can easily rip a human being in half. Resurrected Barons are about the same, aside from the usual buffs that the Mother Demon outfitted all of her children with. Advanced Barons is where things really start to escalate. These gigantic beasts are frighteningly fast and unbelievably strong. Though very similar in appearance to the Ancient and Resurrected subspecies, these particular Barons are considerably larger. Recovered artifacts from Hell imply that Advanced Barons are the royal guard of whatever Dark Lord rules the Fourth Age. More terrifying still is the Fireborn Baron, a somehow even deadlier subspecies native to a region of Hell dubbed the Burning Abyss. In the ridiculously high temperatures of this environment, their bodies have developed carapaces of obsidian and have become infused with the very magma composing the land they call home. This infernal power manifests itself in the form of two energy blades composed of pure hellfire, each floating above the creature's immense wrists. On occasion, they've been known to channel this potent power source into a violent, ground-pounding attack that releases a shock wave of infernal heat upon impact. Armored Barons are the final subspecies and are by far the most dangerous. Wrapped in a set of technologically superior clothing that's simultaneously cutting-edge and ancient, they're completely and totally impervious to all forms of damage. This extremely rare variant patrols the exterior of Amora, the proverbial capital of Hell, and the location the Dark Lord would challenge the Great Slayer in a climactic battle. The reason behind their power lies in the fact that they were blessed by the unholy Lord of Darkness himself. The Morningstar gauntlets they wield are capable of instantaneously obliterating both the body and soul of its target, but it also acts as a weakness too. A slight charge-up is required before it can be launched at its adversary, and if it's shot with a powerful enough projectile during that time, it'll temporarily stun the creature and render it susceptible to normal gunfire for a brief window. Cosmic Barons are enormous monstrosities that are cousins to more natural Hellborn Barons of Hell. These frightening creatures emerged from the cosmic realm, specifically a construct called a mollusk vat. When they were created, their design was based on actual Barons of Hell, but it's not clear if their DNA actually played a part in their creation, or if they were simply inspired by their demonic brethren. Created by the Okirith synthesists, Cosmic Realm natives, using horrific gene splicing techniques, Cosmic Barons are one of the most frightening abominations to come out of the Cosmic Realm's collaboration with the Dark Dimension. Each arm is an enormous blade that can be used to slice through their enemies or fling scythe-like projectiles when they're unable to get close. Their faces are devoid of any real features, aside from an enormous mouth that bears a striking resemblance to Quake's Shamblers. Bruisers are not only one of the most terrifying demons Hell has ever conjured, but they're also extremely bizarre. These giant beasts tower above most other demons on their thick, half-cybernetic legs. Given the UAC's propensity for augmenting demons, it's quite possible these enhancements are human in origin, but I can't say for sure. Each arm is essentially a giant rocket launcher, capable of spewing death and destruction in slightly unhealthy doses. Their most bizarre and viscerally frightening feature is the television monitor that remains suspended a few feet in front of where the creature's mouth should be. Keeping it aloft is a long tube that seems to feed to a mechanism that ends in a robotic spinal cord. The screen displays a few different images depending on the creature's state. While idle, it shows an unnerving close-up of a set of human-like teeth. When their prey is spotted, it changes to a view of a single human eye. Then, once they begin to pursue their target, it shifts to the same set of teeth from before, but this time open. Finally, when damaged, it shows a nasty mess of blood and flesh. Cyber demons are easily one of the most iconic monsters in all of Hell's armies. This is largely thanks to their lethality, but also due to their look. As evil as they may be, I have to admit, they look f***ing badass. Though extremely similar to tyrants, they're far deadlier thanks to their additional health and in some cases varied weaponry. Standing atop two tree trunk-like legs, these unsettling amalgamations of blood and circuitry will relentlessly pursue their prey, launching a nearly non-stop volley of rocket-propelled grenades at anyone who crosses them. The ancient subspecies has wiring that's very similar to the Tyrant as well, the only difference being the red color instead of green. They also have two large front-facing horns that more than likely are used as an additional line of defense if given the chance. Interestingly, an unmodified version of an ancient cyber demon referred to as the Harbinger of Doom was fought and defeated by one of Doom Guy's ancestors, a World War II vet named BJ Blazkowicz. In this climactic battle, he was able to sever the creature's arm and leg with a magical artifact called the Spear of Destiny, and eventually banish it back to Hell. It's worth noting that this Harbinger of Doom is the only recorded instance of a cyber demon actually speaking, though they all may be capable of doing so. It's unclear which cyber demon this would become, but it was likely an individual that the Mighty Slayer defeated on account of the fact that the beast proclaimed it would return to wage war against BJ's bloodline. We all know how that went.
To be clear, this pre-augmented cyber demon appeared in Wolfenstein RPG, which has some other allegedly demonic creatures in it, but if I include them, I'll have to mention everything else from that series, and that's a whole other can of worms for a video that's probably best saved for later. This isn't an id multiverse bestiary, for now this is just Doom. But if you want to see that, let me know in the comments. I do want to make a Quake bestiary at some point, so maybe expect that sometime. I don't know when.
The Mother Demon also created a new version using her foul reanimation magic. They look roughly the same as their previous forms, but like every other demon she resurrected, they're a bit stronger than before and seemingly smarter too, considering this version will sometimes lead its shots, attempting to anticipate where their prey will be rather than where they currently are. The Stygian cyber demon is particularly deadly thanks to its nearly impervious hide, which can only be pierced by special weaponry like the Soul Cube. Its body is even more mechanized than the variants I already mentioned, considering both of its legs have been replaced with machinery, and attached to its back is a massive mechanism that appears to be outputting some kind of exhaust. Dangling beneath it is a tail that, despite the fact it's attached to machinery, moves disturbingly like something organic. An unending internal fire is constantly expelled from the beast's mouth, but it's not exactly clear why. The advanced cyber demon is by far the most destructive version of the creature, thanks to the fact that they were created using another species of long-dead monster called a Bulgar demon. Little is known about these enigmatic creatures, but if the advanced cyber demons are anything to go by, they're an absolute force to be reckoned with. By combining the remains of this mysterious creature with an Argent Accumulator, a device capable of collecting raw hell energy, and other bits of technology, a new life form takes shape. Regardless of how much punishment is dealt to this subspecies of cyber demon, it will invariably draw power from the accumulator embedded within it via an implanted neural pathway. With this energy, it can resurrect itself, meaning the only way to truly eliminate it is to separate the construct from the beast's body. Its actions are inherently more intelligent than many of its demon brethren, suggesting it possesses levels of increased awareness rather than being a beast controlled by simplistic primal instincts. In terms of appearance, this breed of cyber demon is visually distinct thanks to the fact that its body is built upon an entirely different kind of creature. Its torso is encased in a set of armor that's not too dissimilar from Doom Guy's. Its massive legs carry it across the battlefield with alarming speed, allowing it to easily close the gap for a destructive melee strike with its arm-mounted blade. Infernal fire can also be channeled into the melee weapon and released as a wave of superheated energy, capable of melting its attacker. The other limb has been almost entirely replaced by a rocket launcher, with an additional charged firing mode that releases a devastating beam of hellish energy. Its back is covered with missile launchers that behave more like an airstrike. Each death-dealing device flies into the air and paints the ground with symbols to mark where it'll make landfall. These same launchers can be used to expel massive amounts of energy that's much like a thruster pack, effectively propelling the beast even faster. In Hell, these monstrosities are also capable of temporarily summoning large rocky pillars to funnel their enemies into a single location. Of all the demons you could encounter, this is easily one of the worst case scenarios. If you see this thing, chances are you're dead. At first glance, tyrants appear to be cyber demons, and in a way, I suppose they are. It's worth noting that they have been recorded fighting alongside one another though, suggesting at least a minor distinction. Regardless, these hulking behemoths stand atop their gigantic legs, each of which terminate in goat-like hooves. The inside of their bodies appears to be filled with a strange green wiring, but it's unclear whether or not this is integral to their ability to function. One arm appears to have been replaced with a rocket launcher, further enhancing their fighting prowess.
The Eternal variant is even more robotic, as individuals all seem to have had one leg replaced with a cybernetic equivalent. Interestingly, this mechanism seems to connect directly to a series of orange tubes or wires that flow into their torsos. Their weaponry is a bit different when compared to their ancient counterpart as well, having clearly been outfitted with something technologically superior, all of which was created by the UAC, of course. Their attack patterns are extremely similar to advanced cyber demons, summoning missiles that rain from the sky or outputting powerful beams of concentrated energy. When up close to their target, they can create an energy blade to inflict additional damage. They also have noticeably larger horns than their ancient cousins, but as they say, size doesn't matter, right? These beasts are demon lords, and their titles usually consist of warden, slaver, and asshole. Their primary function in Hell is to oversee the collection and extraction of souls taken from the mortal world, ensuring that they're converted into the essence that Hell insatiably craves. Generally speaking, Darkened cyber demons fight much like tyrants do. Anatomically, the biggest difference is the presence of wings, but due to Prince Azarak's fear they may become rebellious, the nerves allowing them to control these appendages have been severed. As some of the oldest recorded demons, their lineage originates from the earliest days of Hell, shortly after the fall of Devoth. One attack that sets them apart from tyrants is their ability to summon spikes from the ground when their enemies are out of sight. They also have an extremely deadly chain gun in place of a rocket launcher. For some reason, they have a strange eye on their chests, much like Addendum hunters, but I'm not sure what purpose it serves. Doom hunters were originally a race of monstrous beasts that were native to Earth millions of years ago. Many were employed and killed in the fights against Doom Guy, only to be preserved in the tundra of Earth. A lot of these corpses were recovered and utilized in a cultist project to regenerate and augment dead tissue. Enhancements were attached to the cadavers that were discovered, such as a gigantic chainsaw arm, a deadly handheld cannon, a modulated voice, and a gravity-defying sled. This strange mechanism is equipped with thrusters that help keep it aloft, as well as rows of rocket launchers. The overall design is remarkably similar to another amalgamation of flesh and metal called Sabaoth. Their forms are also covered in an energy shield that can be disabled if their sled is rendered inoperable. When this happens, the upper body detaches from its base and flies around the battlefield with alarming alacrity. The entire purpose of this entity is to hunt and kill Doom Guy, hence the name, but that won't stop them from slaughtering anyone else that steps in their line of sight. Guardians of Hell are extraordinarily rare animalistic demons that tower above most other infernal species. Much like Hell Guards, they're only employed in locations that need the highest levels of protection. For example, an individual outfitted with Seekers was recorded watching over the Soul Cube, an extremely powerful sentient artifact. Another was found protecting a somewhat hidden gateway that connected an earthly dimension to Hell. Despite their impressive size and somewhat awkward bipedal gait, they're exceptionally fast. Their primary means of attack are the huge bony clubs that are attached to each hand. Particularly devastating strikes on the ground with these biological weapons can cause painful shockwaves and even summon forth balls of hellfire. When bolstered by Seekers, their bodies become impervious to normal strikes, forcing its attackers to eliminate them first and expose a ball of strange infernal energy that seems to serve as the guardian of Hell's lifeline. On the beast's rear is an enormous tail that likely serves to help it balance its otherwise awkward shape. Not much is known about the gladiator or its species, but suffice to say, it, or they, are extremely deadly. Instead of attacking blindly or with mindless brute force, it prefers to utilize combat strategies consisting of carefully timed attacks and precision. Like many other creatures that originate from Hell, its muscular frame rests atop two hairy legs that both end in cloven hooves. Its face is a terrifying visage of teeth, horns, and hatred. The most interesting qualities of this demon, however, all stem from its weapon and shield. Within the metal and stone of its protective tool is the tormented soul of the beast's supposed master. Who that is or what that means is still a mystery. Fortunately, it can be destroyed by piercing its eye. The flail-like maces that it uses are capable of stretching across the battlefield, greatly increasing the beast's range beyond what would be expected at first glance. They can also be spun at ridiculous speeds, not only shielding the wielder from incoming fire, but also reflecting bullets back at its attacker. When two of the death-dealing devices are combined, deadly arcs of energy can be summoned forth, both used as projectiles and serving as a kind of temporary cage for its adversaries. Harvesters are an exceedingly rare breed of monster that's generally only encountered deep within fortified hellkeeps. As minor demon lords, their threat level cannot be understated. Though all of the Dark Dimension's endemic beings have a powerful hunger for human souls, the Harvester is particularly fiendish in its pursuits.
Using a series of holes on their palms, they're able to suck the souls out of their prey, transporting the vital essence through throat-like tubes in their arms that eventually lead to its stomach. The anatomy of these creatures is exceedingly bizarre, as their guts are located on their backs. This organ has been nicknamed a quote-unquote soul sac, and it can expand to successfully house whatever it has consumed. Once it acquires souls, it converts them into a volatile energy source that it can then expel in the form of several balls of deadly energy, or a concentrated beam. That being said, its digestive tract should also theoretically serve as a weak point. Making it rupture would almost certainly cause irreparable harm. Much like Hell ships, Hell carriers are aerial monstrosities built from flesh and bone. These massive monsters were made using the remains of ancient primordial beasts. Smaller demons work within the lower decks of each half-living, half-technological behemoth, all of which man the engines of evil that help the creatures function. For a time, these ships were abandoned, but Prince Azrak revived them for the sole purpose of granting them the ability to enable enormous gateways that can summon titans. Their exteriors are covered in several shielded turrets that fire projectiles at their targets. Once destroyed, the final piece of weaponry, a gigantic eye, will attack with rapid projectiles made of Hell energy. Destroying it will grant access to the interior, which is full of fleshy consoles and switches. Their central core must be destroyed in order to eliminate them completely. Hell Guards, not to be confused with Guardians of Hell, aren't the most intimidating demons ever encountered upon initial inspection, but trust me when I say they are very dangerous. Essentially functioning as miniature gladiators in regards to fighting style, these smaller monsters are quite rare and have only been encountered protecting the demonic crucible. Their composition is very peculiar, their exterior being primarily composed of plates made of bone and keratin. Strangely, this exterior form is inanimate and has no sentience whatsoever, acting as a kind of organic mech suit that's controlled by a relatively small parasitic worm. These creatures are imbued with startling levels of Hell energy, but without their armor, they're so fragile that they're unable to survive transitions from Hell into other dimensions. The inner creature itself is a dark flesh color. Its body is covered in green nodules, and the exterior region around its mouth has 4 mandibles. Sometimes its choice of weaponry is quite similar to the gladiator, but it doesn't possess any of the same abilities. Instead, Hellguards choosing a mace prefer to get up close and personal, occasionally spinning violently and at frightening speeds. They have also been known to encase themselves in a protective green bubble of energy that can be channeled into a powerful projectile-based attack. Fortunately, it's easily destabilized, resulting in a brief period where the creature becomes stunned. Other Hellguards make use of stabs that discharge immense levels of heat, often complementing the close-quarters fighting style of their compatriots. Though they're not as dangerous as gladiators, they have been recorded fighting in pairs, effectively strategizing in ways that make them a force to be reckoned with. Only 3 Hell Hunters have ever been recorded, each employed by an evil entity known as the Maledict, in an attempt to retrieve a powerful weapon called the Heart of Hell. Upon initial inspection, they look quite similar to Stygian Hell Knights, but come equipped with some notably more powerful Hell magic. The Helltime Hunter was the first to be recorded and has some rather unusual traits. For one, it has no legs, and its lower half is engulfed in a never-ending flame. Its upper torso looks roughly the same as the Hell Knights, except for the fact that it's suspended in the air above a collection of floating fireballs. These can be telekinetically brought to its hands and then flung at its adversary. Its most frightening skill is its ability to seemingly teleport from A to B. This is an illusion though, and is actually a powerful magic referred to as Hell Time. Essentially, this hunter can slow the world around it for a short time, literally warping the fabric of reality in an attempt to gain an edge in battle. It's possible that this is the same kind of magic utilized by other allegedly teleporting enemies, such as wraiths, prowlers, summoners, or archviles. The Invulnerability Hunter is even more akin to Hell Knights in regards to its appearance, but with the ability to absorb electrical energy. Once taken into its body, it manifests a shield of blue static that deflects any and all attacks until the power is depleted. Without an energy source, it can be damaged with conventional weaponry, but that doesn't mean it's easy to eliminate. When provoked, it can reshape electricity into a ball to throw at its enemies, or jump into the air to perform a powerful ground-pounding attack that unleashes a damaging blue-tinged wave. These attacks, on top of its sharp claws, make it a more than worthy adversary. The third and final Hell Hunter ever encountered is the Berserk variant. Of the 3 varieties, it's the only one that seems to have eyes and, strangely, no mouth. That being said, it does have jaws that can be seen moving while the creature is idle, perhaps implying that this disgusting entity's mouth was sewn shut rather than some kind of naturally occurring phenomenon. This foul beast deals damage with powerful fireballs blasted from its forehead and with its blade-like claws. When in combat, sigils all across its epidermis begin to glow orange, and the reasoning behind its naming convention slowly starts to become clear. Every so often, it channels
a powerful force that sends the beast into a berserk state, launching it into a jumping frenzy and bestowing it with a considerable increase in damage output. While in this state, its impenetrable ribcage opens up, revealing a soft heart beneath. Inflicting pain on this vital organ is the only way to actually harm the berserk hellhunter, and should remain the primary focus at all times. Komodos are enormous reptilian demons that rapidly advance towards their prey bipedally, always grasped within their two-fingered claw as a huge spear-style weapon, the head of which is a saw blade composed of infernal energy. Attached to their shoulders is a cannon that lobs additional destruction at its intended target. One arm has been replaced with a bulky metallic prosthetic that is often used to help them balance. Their scaly, alligator-like exterior is mostly intact, save for the fact that their faces are completely devoid of any epidermis, instead showcasing a visage of bleached bone. Their muscular tails likely also aid in keeping them upright, but I imagine they can also serve as weapons, given the fact that they're covered in rows of grafted metal spikes. Marauders are fallen Knight Sentinels, the greatest combatants of the Argentan race. These capable adversaries abandoned their people in favor of serving the Maykrs, a collection of pseudo-angels that I'll explain later. Instead of being granted a normal warrior's death, their corpses are resuscitated using a mysterious machine of Maykr design. When they rise once more, their forms become twisted and demonic, seemingly causing several horns of varying sizes to sprout from their heads. Their bodies are covered in an extremely durable armor that closely resembles the clothing the Slayer dons, each of which appears to be outfitted with its own Argent accumulator. One hand wields an axe, which is composed of an exceptionally deadly energy blade that's capable of packing a punch up close and flinging a wave of hell energy outwards. The other hand comes equipped with their own sad imitation of Doom Guy's super shotgun. They're also capable of summoning corrupted spectral hounds, their spirits twisted much like their master. These ghostly entities are used tactically, pressuring and drawing out anyone that might be trying to lick their wounds. When attacked, they project a shield made of the same energy their melee weapon is composed of, blocking any strikes or projectiles sent their way. The only way to damage them is to wait until they attempt to swing their axe, at which point they can be temporarily stunned. Pain elementals for the most part look very similar to cacodemons, suggesting a common ancestor, or perhaps just a similar evolutionary path. This is particularly striking when they're compared to the resurrected variant of the previously mentioned beast. Despite their shared appearance and identical means of locomotion, these demons are considerably more dangerous than their meatball buddies, thanks to their ability to spew lost souls from their massive gullet. This process is excruciatingly painful for them and seems to be something that occurs outside of their control. How exactly are they able to instantaneously birth lost souls without torturing individuals? I don't know, but it seems to suggest that their creation is potentially more nuanced than simply tormenting uncorrupted beings. Unless each lost soul is created from those that they've consumed, their innards essentially functioning like a torturous rock tumbler for a being's essence that polishes them into shiny new monstrosities instead of precious gemstones. The only satisfaction these monsters can acquire is through the infliction of pain and suffering on those who are weaker than themselves. Beholders and Rahovarts are a couple slightly weaker subspecies, their most distinguishing features being their green and blue colors. Some of these, as well as certain individuals belonging to the ancient subspecies, are also capable of breathing balls of fire as an alternative form of attack. The Mother Demon created a very bizarre version of the creature when she reanimated the dead ones left behind by Doom Guy on Mars moons. This hideous subspecies has a mouth on each side of its twisted form, granting it the ability to launch lost souls at its enemies in twice the number. They also seem to have hair dangling from their undersides for some reason, and a notable lack of arms, a trait every other version of the creature possesses. Little is known about Pinkinators, largely thanks to the fact that only one has ever been recorded. These gigantic, lightish red blobs pack quite the punch and are capable of spewing acidic bubbles from their mouths. They have no arms or legs, seemingly sliding across the ground like a disgustingly bloated slug. To supplement its puke attack, it can also vomit up bull demons, a weaker, oftentimes smaller subspecies of Pinky. This seems to imply that Pinkinators potentially serve as an integral step in the reproductive cycle of Pinkies, or at least the bull demon variety of the creatures. The face of this fat bastard looks a lot like a pig with the addition of a horrifically large mouth filled with gigantic pointed teeth. When discharging a bile bubble, its jaw seems to unhinge, making its attacks both painful and deeply unsettling. Sabaoth isn't technically a species, but rather an individual. It Its appearance is extremely similar to the Doom Hunter, perhaps suggesting that it served as a prototype for its eventual design. The body of a particularly tenacious soldier by the name of Sergeant Kelly was grafted onto tank-like treads that once again greatly resembled the sleds Doom Hunters utilize. Sabaoth isn't exactly fast, but its arsenal more than makes up for that inadequacy. One robotic arm can be used to deliver a devastating melee attack, but more importantly, it makes use of its own personal BFG. This fact alone makes it a worthy opponent that would likely put any Doom Hunter to shame. Spider masterminds, sometimes referred to as Spider Demons, are one of the most devastating creatures that Hell has ever employed. Appearance-wise, they resemble arachnotrons, specifically the Mindweaver variant with its rapid-firing machine gun. Basically, their bodies consist of a giant brain that comes complete with eyes and a mouth. This organ is situated atop a cybernetic chassis that has 4 metallic legs. Much like Mindweavers, the ancient variant comes equipped with a heavy-duty chain gun that's more than capable of mowing down its adversaries with ease. Its most deadly feature, however, is its intellect. Leveraging their immense brain power, they're able to be brilliant leaders, capable of commanding large armies of demons and planning complex invasion strategies. The Arania Imperatrix, another name these elite demons go by, roughly translates to Spider Empress, a title that's both extremely fitting and a bit of a misnomer considering they only have 4 legs, not 8. As the battles with Hell continued, they became more and more rare, perhaps suggesting that the mighty Slayer may have driven them to extinction. In some rare cases, upon death, they will release several arachnotrons in their wake, but this is not a typical behavioral pattern. The advanced subspecies is even deadlier than its ancient counterpart, but fortunately, only one has ever been recorded. This particular version of the entity was created through an unholy union of human and demon. A UAC scientist named Olivia Pierce helped the demons launch an invasion on Mars, and as a reward for her assistance, she merged with the Spider Mastermind. Unlike the ancient variant, the advanced subspecies is extremely mobile, making use of its mechanical legs to close the gap between its prey and slash at them with its sharp, pointed feet. The underside of this variety is equipped with a large plasma gun that can fire round bolts and powerful beams. The side of its body also possesses several weapons, all of which function like the primary gun's concentrated attack. Occasionally, it will flip upside down, effectively obscuring its face and making it ever so slightly more difficult to inflict pain upon. When particularly threatened, it will output a large area with an intense amount of energy, electrocuting anyone who stands on any nearby surface. Using some kind of telekinesis or perhaps a tractor beam of sorts, it can fling large projectiles outwards to produce devastating results. Another interesting ability is that it can summon forth pillars from the ground that help block sight lines. These aren't safe spaces though. If something stands atop them, it will send spikes flinging upward through the surface to impale its victims. Vagaries are easily one of the ugliest breeds of demon ever recorded. They seem to have a connection with Trites, given their similar appearance. Perhaps this indicates some kind of matriarchal relationship with the lesser creatures. These arachnoid adversaries possess 8 legs and a semi-translucent thorax that likely has the ability to spin webs. It also looks kind of like a baby face, I guess? Its arms and 2 front legs are often used in melee combat, but its more deadly attack is its ability to telekinetically launch objects at its prey. Emerging from its spidery half is the upper torso of what vaguely looks like a woman. Its hideous face has 6 eyes and a mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth. Just below her head is what appears to be breasts, but they're completely devoid of nipples, so their purpose seems to be entirely mimicry rather than actual functionality. That being said, I'm not exactly sure who'd be fooled by this. Ugh. Thankfully, they've been encountered very seldom and also lack the same level of danger their potential spider mastermind cousins possess. I'm truly amazed that the Darkened variant is somehow even uglier than its Stygian cousin. These hideous freaks are perched atop 6 robotic spider-like legs. Their arms are also entirely mechanical, one of which is a gun, while the other is a series of razor-sharp claws. Attached to their backs is another piece of technology, but its purpose is much less obvious. The only organic parts of their form are their faces and torsos. Looking at their terrifying visage will reveal a pair of menacing eyes on one side of their head and a robotic equivalent on the other. Their bottom jaws are separated into mandibles that are covered with teeth, further solidifying that split chins are a very common demonic adaptation. Unlike the Stygian variant, these ugly mothers fight with guns, acidic carpet bombs, and waves of infernal energy instead of telekinetic attacks. Generally, they're quite heavily armored, and it's best to go for the soft, exposed skin on their backs when attempting to take one down. Oh, also, they're absolutely massive. Vizagos are extremely rare demons that have only ever been recorded deep in the bowels of the Dark Dimension, specifically in a place called Vizagos Rest. This area is generally devoid of most demonic activity due to the presence of Vizago demons, and thanks to the fact that most other creatures within Hell fear them. Their large blackened bodies are extremely muscular and seemingly infused with a deadly hell magic. Atop their charred forms is a skull made of bleached bone, and attached to their backs are 2 large wings. Their stature is intimidating, but the real damage when facing them comes from their pyrokinetic abilities. Each hand is bathed in a ball of searing heat that never flickers in its intensity. This energy can be concentrated and thrown, creating a deadly projectile that will linger wherever it lands, incessantly burning away the life force of anyone unfortunate enough to feel its wrath.
This is Dr. John Jacobson, log entry number 004, subject analysis of Mancubus, or rather Mancubi, May 27th, 2160. Dr. Pierce says I'm to outfit 443 with UAC augmentations in a few days, but I'm worried because many subjects don't survive the process, and I've grown rather attached to it. I think I might try to I just left a meeting with Dr. Betruger, and he told me I should try to better communicate with Specimen 443, who I've affectionately dubbed Gus. In my talk with Gus today, I think he tried to communicate with me. He seemed to smile when I held up a drawing of the two of us together. Under normal circumstances, I'd gather more data before going forward with the plan Dr. Betruger and I formulated, but Gus's surgery is scheduled in just an hour. I have to act now. Gus, hi, it's me, John, your friend. Yes, friends, Gus, I'm. Wait, Gus, what are you doing? No, wait, Gus, no! Ah!
Azrak is an extremely deadly, highly capable Hell Lord. Appearance-wise, he looks fairly unassuming, a relatively small demon with no obviously remarkable traits. Don't let this fool you. He is far more than a simple monster thanks to his cunning intellect, excellent battlefield prowess, and a genuine vision for invasions under his command. After obtaining immense cosmic power in the form of an elemental wraith's soul, his normal demonic body transformed to become a twisted amalgamation of wraith and demon. Giant bat-like wings covered in eyes sprouted from his back, and his power in this state became near absolute. Wielding his spear, he's able to deliver powerful melee strikes, and thanks to some newly christened flight-granting appendages, fly above the battlefield. He can hide within an energy bubble, and once inside, launch deadly projectiles along the ground towards his attackers. He's also able to bring forth darkened shades that explode on contact, and pillars of infernal alloy that can shoot balls of hellish energy. Though he's clearly a capable fighter, his true strength lies within his mind and his union with the cosmic realm. Little is known about the Archdemon Erebus, aside from the fact that he is one of the Dark Lord's lieutenants and rules over a large portion of Hell. This grotesque demon's job is to maintain the title of Slave Master, lording his power over the damned souls within his dimension, and much like tyrants, ensuring their eternal torment. Its fat, tentacle-ridden body appears to have become so swollen that it likely no longer possesses the ability to move. Like any other Archdemon, its power is unfathomable, but it ultimately answers to the Dark Lord. In some cases, Hell Priests were originally part of the Argentan People's Holy Knight Sentinels, specifically a group referred to as the Order of Daig. Their job in that society prior to corruption was to pay tribute to the elemental wraiths, godlike beings that they worshipped before the appearance of a race of pseudo-angels called Maykrs. Eventually their roles shifted to preaching the teachings of these new beings, but for the most part their function hadn't really changed. Once demons were discovered and the powers of hell energy were understood, they allied themselves with the Maykrs, who had in turn made a bargain with the denizens of the Dark Dimension. This union led to their corruption, and the once holy Argentine people became twisted by their cravings for power, thus transforming them into hell priests. Though they possessed the fragile forms of men, they had acquired and been imbued with immense power upon their allyship with hell. This not only twisted their bodies into more demonic forms and gave them ruling positions above most other demons, but it also made them impervious to most attacks. The only way to kill these hell priests is to first acquire a token of great power. Then, and only then, can damage be inflicted upon their weak physical forms. Other, much older hell priests exist in a strange state that's somewhere between flesh and spirit. It's unclear if this also applies to Nilox, Grav, and Ronic. Regardless, these feeble entities are forbidden from becoming archdemons, instead serving as conduits for the demonic High Council. Belias is the oldest of their number, having witnessed Hell's empire rise and fall across millennia. His true origin, unlike Nilox, Grav, and Ronic, is far more ancient and mysterious. Though Calabas is immobile, this entity can still be somewhat of a threat. Its purpose in Hell is to watch over the souls that are being fed into an extraction process and judge whether or not they're fit for converting into raw essence or should be discarded into the blood swamps. Its body is essentially just an enlarged brain that's protected by an impenetrable shield. The only way to get through it is to destroy 4 large purple eyes outside of the protective bubble, each of which has the ability to shoot projectiles in self-defense. Once the force field is removed and Calabas is exposed, all that's needed to kill the creature is a single hefty blunt force strike. Kronos is a 4-armed skeletal demon that has no legs and somehow manages to float above the ground. Very little is known about this being, and it's unclear whether or not it's a special species of monster, a unique hellish aberration, or perhaps even an archdemon serving directly under the Dark Lord. Regardless, this particularly clever entity was able to disguise himself as a simple human scientist named Dr. Gerard, and stealthily spearhead a demonic invasion on one of the UAC's bases on Mars. The fate of the actual human being he was impersonating is unknown. It's possible that he could have simply been killed by Kronos or merged with the entity, akin to what happened with Olivia Pierce, or perhaps Malcolm Betruger. Though Kronos is far from the largest demon ever encountered, it makes up for this with its notable intellect and ability to teleport, or perhaps utilize hell time to slow the world around it. Though not particularly imposing in appearance, this creature is extremely dangerous and is even capable of manufacturing cyber demons. Most interestingly is its resemblance to the elemental wraiths of the cosmic realm. Unfortunately, little is known about the demon known as Maledict. Through a process that appears like it may be akin to Olivia Pierce's merging with a spider mastermind, another UAC scientist named Malcolm Betruger seems to have undergone a similar process. Whether or not a form of the Maledict existed prior to this potential merge, or if he was simply transformed into the creature like the Hell Priests and their eventual demonic reshaping, is unclear. As a result, little is known about its exact origin, but thankfully only one of these hideous creatures has ever been recorded. The Maledict is essentially a wyvern, a dragon-like creature that has 2 large leathery wings and a set of hind legs. Its head looks like an animalistic skull, complete with 2 horns that protrude outward. When opening its mouth, what initially appears to be a tongue extends forth, but disturbingly, instead of being pink flesh, it's the face of Malcolm Betruger. It's through this face that the creature speaks, using the voice of the scientist its visage resembles. For all intents and purposes, it is Betruger, but twisted into an evil and ugly version of his former self. I suppose it's worth mentioning that it does greatly resemble Winthrins, though I don't know if any direct connection exists. When attacking, it will fly through the air, spewing explosive balls at its attacker with alarming speed. On top of this, it will utilize its power of flight to lay down patches of hellfire that linger on the ground for a few moments. Much like the rest of demonkind, the Maledict's sole purpose is to invade the earthly realms and absorb any and all it contains. Mother demons are an exceptionally rare breed of infernal creature, only 2 of which have ever been recorded. Their abilities rival that of the Archvile, allowing them to not only resurrect fallen demons in great numbers, but also reshape their physical forms to make them all the more deadly. It's these skills that make these entities some of the deadliest demons ever recorded, and when encountered, the highest priority should be their elimination. Appearance-wise, these behemoths are almost larva-like, except for the fact that they possess 4 arms and can float above the ground as their primary source of locomotion. Resurrection isn't their only means of attack either. They're also capable of summoning deadly fireballs with heat-seeking properties and fire trails that spread across the ground from its origin point. Why exactly these beings are referred to as mother demons is unclear, as no birthing process has ever been observed. Given the fact that the Dark Lord is the creator of demonkind, their purpose is rendered even less clear, but whatever the case may be, their threat level cannot be understated. The Trial of Malagog is a weird entry in this bestiary because I'm not exactly sure how sentient, or even where the sentience lies in this particular instance. As far as I can tell, it's a ritualistic battle orchestrated by a titan named Malagog. This demon is exceptionally large though, seemingly dwarfing his other titan brethren. His role in Hell is to protect the life spheres of the various gods that have existed throughout the course of history, most notably the Father and Devoth, or the Dark Lord. Though Malagog itself is a beastly entity, the trial manifests in an entirely different fashion. Instead of a standard infernal monster, it appears as two large spiked cubes that are able to fly around a small arena. As they move, they launch projectiles at their attacker, as well as summon demons that act as a defensive force. Every so often, the cubes open to reveal an eye within. This pseudo-organ is the only way to damage this strange being, and once enough pain has been dealt, the object housing the eye becomes grounded. Punching it into a protective shield that's located at the center of the trial's arena is the only way to fully destroy it and prompt an additional cube to appear. Once it materializes, rinse and repeat, eventually causing two more to attack at the same time. Their destruction signals that whoever the combatant is has proved themselves worthy of entering the arena where the gods' life spheres are held, at which point Malagog will awaken to shuttle them to this enigmatic location. Titans are a race of immense demons that tower above most other recorded beings in existence. Generally, they're bipedal, covered in layers of nearly impervious skin, and possess two enormous horns affixed to their dizzyingly large heads. Due to their height and incredible strength, very few proven methods to defeat them exist. One of the primary means of eliminating them is to plunge a crucible blade into their hearts or brains, effectively sending them into a state akin to hibernation. Aside from that, giant mechs have been constructed to better face these great and terrible beasts as well. These utterly massive entities are so large that they're sometimes employed as walking fortress carriers. When utilized this way, they're referred to as hell barges, which are essentially castles built atop the backs of these immeasurable monsters. According to ancient Sentinel writing, the appearance of titans will herald the end of days, each embodying the forces of chaos and destruction. Once upon a time, they were peaceful giants who served as guardians of their original realm. Sadly, these behemoth entities weren't cut out for warfare, and as a result, they were easily subjugated by Hell. Ironically, in a demonic state, they would become one of the driving forces behind large-scale invasions, a stark contrast to their original protective roles. They're typically outfitted with gigantic cudgels, armor, and shields. Others are forced to remain affixed to one location as a sort of living beam tower. Some titans were selected for cybernetic augmentation, converting them into single-minded death machines hell-bent on obeying their master's thirst for destruction. Usually, they wield gigantic energy blades and are visually distinct thanks to their single cyclopic eye. Many of these creatures exist, some with their own unique titles and likely appearances too, but none are as well known as the Icon of Sin. This beastly creature has taken a few different forms throughout history in each battle with humankind. In most cases, the one and only Doomslayer was there to stop it. In the oldest recorded battles, this massive monstrosity used its abilities to summon demons from cubes that it could emit from its brain. It also led several invasions on an earthly dimension in Doom Guy's ancient past. Upon multiple defeats, the creature returned in a slightly altered state to attack a few other human individuals, initially manifesting as Vios, or the virtual Icon of Sin. This entity was simply a representation of its will, existing as lines of code and projected into a mortal plane. Though only an avatar, it had some powerful abilities, such as being able to transport living, breathing beings into a digital space. If demonkind is unable to directly enter a dimension, it seems as though they have the ability to manifest as simulacra, manufactured versions that work to inflict pain and suffering in their stead. Thankfully, it seemed to be weakened from its many defeats at the hands of Doom Guy prior, and as a result, wasn't able to attack in a physical form. In this state, it was defeated by 3 lucky people, at which point it would lie dormant for an unknown amount of time. Eventually, it was collected by Maykrs, outfitted with technology of their creation, and finally resurrected using the soul of a fallen Argentan soldier. In this new state, its power had grown, likely thanks to the armor given to its immense form. In a final climactic battle against the Great Slayer, it unleashed the full extent of its might. Instead of simply summoning demons to fight for it, the Icon of Sin engaged directly, utilizing its enormous fists and powerful infernal magic. Its only weakness is its brain, a chink in its otherwise unbreakable armor that Doom Guy invariably exploited time and time again. Devoth, the Dark Lord, the Nameless One, Satan, God, is the father of demonkind and allegedly the architect of one or multiple universes. It's worth mentioning that he too has a creator, but what exactly they might look like or what their goal was when creating him is shrouded in mystery. Millennia ago, Hell was a beautiful utopian place. Supposedly, it was the first plane of existence to take shape, brought into being by Devoth in an act of creative godhood. In this pre-hellified state, this once idyllic realm was called Jakad, and its beauty was truly unparalleled. Devoth loved his people and his dimension, desiring only for their continued prosperity, but his children did not possess eternal life as he did. Their forms were unable to house an undying spirit, and thus they would eventually decay. Devoth deemed this unacceptable and quickly became obsessed with finding a solution to this problem, essentially a cure for his people's mortality. To pursue this goal, he created a brand new race of creatures that became known as the Maykrs. Their machine minds would work in unison, a kind of hive mind focused on this one and only goal, effectively granting them the perspective and capacity to better search for a solution. This plan was a success, but in his obsession to eradicate death from Jakad, he had started to lose his mind, and the Maykrs made the difficult decision to betray him. They had discovered the secret to immortality, but giving it to Devoth and his people, in their eyes, had become too dangerous. They feared that with this power, he would threaten all of existence. The records of this deceit were rewritten in the Maykrs' home dimension of Urdak in an attempt to hide their deceit, while they simultaneously sealed Jakad away from the rest of creation. Imprisoned, Devoth became filled with hatred and rage, emotions that consumed him, permeating his very being. As time went on, he became the Dark Lord, and the original inhabitants of Jakad became twisted, demonic versions of their former selves. Little is known about the Dark Lord's origin, or what all he created before his forced exile, but it is said that he is formless, taking many different shapes throughout the course of existence. He claims to be the creator of all things, but the boundaries of this are gray, to say the least. Like any godly being without a physical form, his essence was collected into a life sphere. In this state, he was still able to influence others to act on his behalf by whispering tainted thoughts into their minds. Some of his essence was channeled into Doom Guy using a device called the Divinity Machine, but the vast majority of his power remained within the sphere I mentioned earlier. Once given physical form again, he took on the same appearance as Doom Guy. Was this a shape he chose, or simply the truth behind his visage? The answer is unclear. It is said that Devoth is a primeval, and that the only way to defeat one of these entities is with another primeval, suggesting that Doom Guy might just be more than human. A primeval is essentially one of the first beings to have ever taken form, and each possesses such strength that only one can exist in a single plane of existence at a time. Buff totems are fragile pieces of demonic technology that appear to be inanimate objects. Essentially, they're physical manifestations of human suffering and are capable of outputting powerful waves of a dark energy. Are they truly sentient or conscious? I'm not sure. Given their seemingly fleshy structure, I'm inclined to think the answer is yes, but concrete answers remain elusive. Regardless, these visually innocuous totems imbue any demon within close proximity of them with immense power and agility. At the same time, they have the ability to melt the brains of any mortal being that gets too close, leaving their minds stricken with unmitigated terror. The mechanics behind demon empowerment is unclear, but given the parasitic nature of Hell, it's quite possible that it works in much the same way as spirit possession. Perhaps a non-corporeal entity merges with the demon in question, thus empowering them further. If a demon attains this power, they become slightly tougher than usual, making their defeat a much higher priority. Primarily, this seems to only occur with slightly more powerful demons, as very few fodder have been recorded in this state. In some cases, empowered demons don't have additional strength themselves, but rather they're connected to a group of others that will be significantly bolstered until the empowered demon is killed. Much like Hell energy itself, demonic poltergeists appear to be a raw form of sentient life force. Interestingly, these particular intelligences are completely invisible to the human eye and can only attack by manipulating objects around them. When doing so, they'll launch anything they can find at alarming speeds towards their prey, and in some cases alter a person's perception to instill fear. Demonic sharks are a very rare breed of demon, likely due to their natural environment being far removed from human interference. What the mechanics behind their creation remains unclear, but it's likely that they were once normal elasma branches that became possessed with demonic hatred. On the other hand, it's possible that these creatures could exist naturally throughout Hell, but unfortunately we just don't have enough information to know for sure. Regardless of how they came to be, this creature will absolutely bite the shit out of you if approached. Little is known about demonic troopers' appearance, given the fact that every recorded individual was clad in a set of crimson armor. Both their clothing and their weapons were forged in the fires of hatred and suffering, but it seems to provide them with very little real firepower or protection. These allegedly elite warriors have watched over the ancient hell city of Amora for eons, defending its walls ever since the betrayal of their leader and creator, Devoth. Their loyalty to the Dark Lord is unwavering, but their forms are extremely fragile, and as a result, they're dispatched with ease. Unfortunately, almost nothing else is known about them, but it's at least worth mentioning that they bear more than a passing resemblance to humans, thanks to their body structure. Gore nests are a fundamental stepping stone in an invasion by Hell. As mortal individuals die, their bodies are collected into fleshy heaps where arcane rituals are then performed. Upon their completion, and with enough biomass, a gore nest is created. Though these disgusting structures aren't ambulatory, they do possess vital organs and fluids, suggesting they are alive in some capacity. Their purpose is to act as a sort of gateway to Hell, or at least areas with a greater demonic presence. Suspended above what appears to be their open mouths is an orb-shaped portal that leads to areas containing more denizens of the Dark Dimension. They work by producing extreme electromagnetic frequencies that are capable of inversing quantum fields, thus creating a hellish portal. If a gore nest is attacked or it senses the presence of the living, demons will be siphoned from wherever its portal leads. These monsters will defend the structure with unparalleled ferocity, because without them, links to Hell, or rather more hellish areas, are lost. The smaller varieties of these creatures contain small nodules on their sides that must be removed in order to destroy them and sever any connection they're making. Standard gore nests are the most common, but other much deadlier versions of the biological buildings have been recorded. The Secret variant's portal has a much lighter hue when compared to its standard counterpart and possesses a connection to a series of specific demons that must be killed within a short window of time for it to be destroyed. If they're not eliminated quick enough, they'll simply regenerate and attack when the gore nest is tampered with once again. The deadliest of the small variants, typically tucked away in areas that are off the beaten path, are the Slayer gore nests. These awful abnormalities are visually distinct on account of their purple portal color and unique behavior. The biggest difference between them and other varieties is that they don't summon defenders to the nest site, but rather they transport its attacker to an area to be eliminated by a horde of demons. If they're all defeated, whoever attacked the gore nest is sent back to its origin point, upon which it will be destroyed. A strange yellow portal version of the structures have also been recorded, simply dubbed escalation gore nests, due to their ability to, well, escalate an already dangerous demonic contingent. Unlike others of their ilk, escalation nests have two nodules on their sides. When the first is removed, a wave of demonic combatants are summoned, and upon its defeat, the structure regenerates. To destroy it fully, the secondary organ must also be removed, followed by the defeat of another group of demons. The most deadly version is the Super Gore Nest. These immense structures will grow to be the size of a skyscraper, covering the surrounding area in vile coatings of flesh and bone. Whether or not all gore nests are capable of becoming super is unknown. These heinous building-like behemoths seem to have their own internal organs, most notably the presence of a heart. If it's destroyed, the entire nest will self-destruct. There are a few other variants of gore nests that are structurally quite different, such as the tall version, for example. Though these appear to be a bit more structurally sound, they serve the exact same function as any other gore nest. Hell gates are another example, but I'm not sure these are technically living at all. They appear to be a biological structure and will fall once any demons positioned outside of them are killed. There's a miniature version of these structures as well, but they're functionally the same. Hell cultists were once scholarly human beings turned demonic, thanks to their own desire to explore the strange power of a new dimension, Hell. Upon meddling with these forces, their minds broke, and now they seek to only bring pain and suffering. Under the dominion of Prince Azrak, their only purpose is to break open the dimensional barrier between Hell and an earthly plane, so that the Dark Ones can consume the worlds within. Despite their lack of fighting skills, the small Hell portals they create can be very dangerous. They're manifested in the same way as standard gore nests, but they don't seem to be able to maintain their link to Hell without the presence of the cultists who opened the portals.
Hell energy is the most basic form of fiendish monstrosity. This simplistic force doesn't exist in a physical state like lost souls do, and its only goal seems to be to possess the living. It's likely that this is what the demonic ghosts seen in the haunted halls of Mars City are as well, a potent force of non-corporeal hatred that converts the living into zombies or maybe even imps. Hell energy does appear to have a minor level of sentience, as it only converts some mortal beings into soldiers for the forces of hell. Hell growth is a strange phenomenon that starts to appear when a realm is being invaded by the dark dimension. These fleshy tendrils of cancer-like cells rapidly spread across the environment, terraforming the landscape at an even faster rate once in the presence of demon kind. On a microscopic level, this simplistic biological abomination is able to reproduce faster than any other known life. There doesn't appear to be any rhyme or reason for many of the shapes and sizes hell growths form. It's all disturbingly random, aside from the fact that it appears to modify the environment to better necessitate its further proliferation. On top of this, it also produces airborne toxins and hazards that can easily kill mortal beings. How this disease-like biohazard originally came to be is unknown, but its arrival only serves to accelerate total demonic consumption. In some cases, these growths appear to become more distinct and aware structures, such as these things. I have no idea what to even call them. Maybe they're not even hell growths, but I don't know. There's literally no information about them, so that's where they're gonna be in this video. Living walls have been encountered in multiple different forms across recorded history. In some cases, their origins are easily understood, while in others, they remain surprisingly enigmatic. One such example is the Wall of Many Faces. What purpose these distorted visages actually serve, or how they might have originated, are facts that remain elusive. It's possible that they are simply another form of meat cage, a collection of individuals that were tortured and being prepared for essence processing. Torso cubes may very well be another result of this as well, though they are slightly less anatomically sensical. Maggot summoners may be connected to this process too, but it's difficult to say for sure. Are eye sigils sentient in any way? I have no idea, but I don't like how they're always watching me. Stop that. Eye portals are even worse though. Walking into them transports you to another location. Ugh. Eye switches literally function as buttons that open certain areas when pain is inflicted upon them. You know, typical cheery hell shit. Power-ups are a weird entry in this bestiary because I'm not exactly sure which of them is actually an entity. The only concrete information we have is regarding quad damage. When absorbed, the individual becomes a host for a powerful entity referred to as a Thranx demon. I have no idea what this means, but it seems to function in much the same way as a summoner spirit possessing a demon to empower them. When a quad damage is absorbed, the individual granted this temporary power is imbued with 4 times the destructive potential. Any weapon or projectile they utilize during that time is given increased ballistic power. In one case, an individual managed to decapitate 3 UAC security personnel with nothing but a simple pocket knife. What happens to the individual once the power has been dissipated is not known, but it surely has some kind of lasting psychological effect. Onslaught seems to function in much the same way and doesn't appear to be any different. With all of that said, quad damage is the only power-up that is explicitly known to possess those who touch it with a kind of rare demon. But given that every other power-up functions in a similar fashion, I wanted to briefly mention them here just in case they too are sentient in some capacity. Ancient, resurrected, eternal, and darkened soul spheres are bizarre orbs stricken with a mournful face that, when absorbed, heal all injuries, leaving the user feeling completely invigorated. Stygian soul spheres serve the same function, but they look like babies for some reason. The eternal, darkened, and certain ancient versions also mend the user's armor to its maximum effectiveness. As the name suggests, these appear to be composed of a raw, concentrated form of essence, the energy that's extracted from the torturing of mortal beings. Ancient megaspheres and resurrected megaspheres are much the same, but their faces are notably different. They function identically to eternal and some ancient soul spheres. Ancient, resurrected, Stygian, and advanced invulnerability will grant their user with, well, invulnerability. After interacting with it, an impenetrable layer of plasma is dispersed underneath the skin. This protects from external attacks, but also makes direct contact with nerve cells throughout the body, causing excruciating pain. After repeated abuse, the plasma eventually dissipates, leaving the user vulnerable once again. Haste and seemingly overdrive as well imbue the user with increased speed. These effects are brief, but immensely powerful when utilized properly. It's possible that these power-ups are a raw form of Hell-time energy, a special reality-warping power that slows the world around those who use it. The problem is, when absorbed by normal individuals, every facet of their movement is increased, including their heart rate, which eventually leads to its explosion. Ancient partial invisibility and advanced invisibility have roughly the same appearance and function, making the user harder to see. This effect is akin to the natural state of certain demons, such as specters. It doesn't appear to be sentient in any way, aside from the fact that it resembles an eye. Resurrected partial invisibility and Stygian invisibility work in exactly the same way, they just have a different appearance, instead looking like a cracked red orb or a green transparent human skull. Ancient Berserker and Stygian Berserker look quite different from Advanced Berserk and Eternal Berserk, but they all function in the same way. When absorbed, the user is possessed with increased strength and anger. The downside to this is that the rage within them becomes all-consuming, forcing them to inflict pain upon anyone they see. If no one is nearby to vent their rage on, they will result to self-harm. In most cases, once this power has been flushed from their systems, they exist in a permanent state of delirium. That being said, particularly capable individuals appear to exhibit no long-term negative effects. Darkened Berserk has no lore whatsoever and doesn't look to be alive at all, so that's all I'll say about it. Mega health pickups appear to be a hybridization of soul spheres and UAC technology. When absorbed by most human beings, it has the same effects as the previously mentioned orb, but shortens their overall lifespan. If a demon is forced to consume it, they suffer an agonizing death shortly after. Mega health is extremely volatile and will combust if not consumed quickly. Finally is Regeneration. It looks identical to quad damage, except it's blue instead of purple. It essentially functions like a delayed megasphere that slowly regenerates vitality and mends armor over time rather than instantaneously. Tentacles generally only spawn where hell growth has proliferated, their only purpose to protect the sources of this strange disease-like force. Their bodies are devoid of any sensory organs, instead they're equipped with small spikes and a large bony point that can be used for slashing or stabbing. Bizarrely, they possess a keen sense of their surroundings and will leap out of holes in the ground to disembowel those that get too close. Generally, these creatures are about 6 feet tall, but in some rare cases they can reach immense sizes. Though these large variants are deadlier thanks to their size, their attack patterns are identical and thankfully easily predicted. Turrets are not naturally occurring, but instead are the creation of the Hell Priest Dag Neelox. Though they're unable to move beyond their fell steel carapaces, they can be a surprisingly dangerous adversary if left unchecked. When attacking, a single purple eye will emerge from their base, firing dangerous projectiles at their adversaries. In this state, they can be harmed, but between barrages of bullets, they will retreat into their nearly impervious stand. Prior to the defeat of Neelox at the hands of the Slayer, they served as literal eyes for the Hell Priest, but since his death, they've become directionless, mindlessly attacking anyone that gets too close. Maykr angels are some of the highest ranking individuals within this unusual collective. These highly esteemed beings function as speakers for the Khan Maykr, an even higher ranking designation for their species. Each Maykr angel is given golden orator rings to symbolize their rank. Armor covers most of their features aside from their mouths and the tentacles that exist where their legs should be. Each of them has 2 wings that appear to be made out of advanced alloy and an energy source of unknown origin. Generally, they work alone, serving as solitary advisors for the Khan Maykr and watching over worlds that fall under the jurisdiction of their empire. Once corrupted by demonic influence, their skin and armor turns red and they become blood Maykrs. In this state, they move alongside demons without consequence thanks to the hellfire that now courses through their bodies. Their stabs are kept and used as deadly weapons that shoot small projectiles at their attackers. Covering their bodies is an impenetrable shield that only dissipates when they're performing a charged attack. When the projectile lands, it deals a decent amount of damage, lingers on the ground, and drastically slows anyone that's unfortunate enough to be caught in it. It's not known if these attacks are unique to their corrupted forms or just innate abilities all of their designation possesses. Maykr drones are the lowest ranks in the holy halls of Urdak. Though each of them has their own sense of self, they only exist as extensions of the Khan Maker's will and are literally incapable of disobeying her commands. As a result, they function somewhat like a hive mind, perfectly synchronizing their movements with one another. These big-headed creatures have no arms or legs. Instead, they have a mass of tentacles emerging from their lower half. Their primary form of locomotion is floating above the ground using an unknown means of propulsion. They've been recorded wearing various different colors of armor, each of which likely denotes some kind of rank. Primarily, we've seen white within Urdak itself, red fighting alongside the Khan Maykr, gold employed by Bishop Creed, and gold with red trim, which seem to be leaders also employed by the Bishop. When corrupted by demonic influence, nothing really changes about their appearance, the only noticeable difference being a red glow that emanates from their eyes. Though most are not strong enough to leave Urdak, they can still be somewhat troublesome in combat scenarios. Their armored bodies take reduced damage, they constantly fling yellow projectiles, and when approached, they will lash out with golden energy-based whips. These whips are basically their arms, typically utilized to interact with machinery and UI interfaces.
Khan Maykrs are the supreme leaders of Urdak, birthed from the Singularity, the collective Maykr consciousness. Upon their birth, they serve as the rulers of Maykr kind until the next of their elite status is born, which occurs every 10,000 years. This Singularity contains the quote-unquote conscious soul data of every integral Maykr to have ever existed. With this information, it's able to determine which traits are best, functioning as a sort of selective evolutionary process that seemingly helps formulate a better Khan at the end of each cycle. Once 10,000 years have passed, Khan Maykrs begin to deteriorate, but their aging process is quite different from our own. Instead of slowly withering away, they begin the transfiguration process, a painful metamorphosis that causes them to physically change. Their bodies begin to enlarge, their forms start to corrupt, and their minds begin to slip until they eventually become much more monstrous in appearance. What happens next isn't exactly clear, as the entire process is yet to be recorded. Perhaps this suggests some kind of connection to the cosmic realm. A lot of the changes undergone during transfiguration are very reminiscent to the structures of that bizarre dimension. Appearance-wise, the Khan Maykr doesn't look particularly different from the others within her bizarre collective. They have a mass of tentacles instead of legs, float instead of walk, and are covered in white armor. Like Maykr angels, they too possess large wings that seem to unfurl from nowhere, granting them the ability to truly fly rather than just float, as well as fling arcs of yellow energy at their enemies. When in combat, they will cover their bodies in an energy shield that can be depleted over time. Once broken, they become vulnerable to more blunt forces. They're also capable of summoning large balls of purple energy that sear the flesh of those who get caught in its blast radius. The most punishing attack at their disposal is their ability to rain a beam of life force-sucking energy down from the heavens. Bizarrely, beneath their masks is a far less angelic visage. The most notable features are the additional set of eyes and the strange 4 mandibles where their bottom jaw should be. Contained within the center of their torsos is a sphere that will rupture upon their death. Bishop Creed is a grotesque member of the Maykr race that oversees the collection of Sentinel energy and ensures that it flows to the Maker's homeworld. Though his corpulent form and weak willpower suggest he may be a poor fighter, his battlefield prowess, much like his girth, is surprisingly ample. Thanks to his throne, he's able to hover above the ground quite quickly. By utilizing 3 Orator rings, he's able to launch small yellow balls, deadlier metal orbs, charged green projectiles, and a frightening airstrike-style attack that leaves lingering damage-dealing devices on the ground. One of the most dangerous technologies that he utilizes in defense are the damage-dealing orbs he can send across the battlefield, each of which are shielded by durable metal. Upon sustaining a lot of damage, he can encase himself in a shield bubble, from within which he's able to fling spears of light across the ground, launch powerful orbs of golden energy, and create large, hard light walls to box in his adversary. Beneath his armor is a somehow even more disgusting collection of large, intestine-like worms that can wriggle freely. Under that is his true, feeble Maykr body. Serving as right-hand men for the Father, an equally enigmatic entity, Seraphs are Maykrs that function independently from the Khan, granting them a truer sense of free will. Though obviously members of the Maykr collective due to their appearance, what exactly their role was in that society isn't exactly clear. They were sort of akin to monks, or a kind of hyper-devoted royal guard, tasked with whatever the Father needed. Supposedly, they were the first creatures brought into being by the Father, which would explain the apparent disconnect between them and the rest of the Maykr collective. At one point, each of these strange beings possessed wings, but they were stripped by the Father after a mysterious battle. How long they live, or what other purposes they might serve in Maykr society, if any, isn't really known. Samur, in particular, has had an exceptionally long and tumultuous existence, having taken many forms throughout his life. When the Dark Lord was betrayed by the Father and the Maykrs, the Father receded from the physical world. He entrusted his most loyal servant, Samur, to help him hide from the Dark Lord, the true creator. At some point, he decided to become a member of humanity, essentially manufacturing a human body to house his consciousness. His name during this time was Samuel Hayden, and leveraging his knowledge of demons, he helped the UAC discover Argent Energy. His body would eventually be stricken by cancer, at which point he would design a new cybernetic form to contain him. This too was eventually destroyed, forcing him to retake his original form. Perhaps due to his age, the lack of the Father's physical presence, or the inability to utilize Argent Energy, his body began rapidly undergoing the transfiguration process. This caused his physical form to morph into a much uglier version, and in this state he lashed out at the Slayer. The strangest physical feature that he possessed at this point was a large eye in the center of his chest. It's unclear if all Seraphs are capable of utilizing the same combat strategies employed by Samur during his climactic battle with Doom Guy, but if so, they are certainly a force to be reckoned with. In this state, Maykr was able to launch clusters of deadly projectiles, dash at frightening speeds, summon damage-dealing eyes, control demons, create a shield out of summoner spirits, and manipulate environmental hazards. Almost nothing is known about the Father's true form, and thanks to his betrayal of Devoth, the history behind his creation is a bit murky. According to information recovered from Urdak, the Father was the first being, and he created all of existence around him. First, he made the Seraphs, his personal servants. Then he made Devoth and Jakad, the dimension that would eventually become Hell. This was a lie, though, manufactured to conceal the fact that Devoth was the first being and that the Father was created by him. After he turned against his creator, he withdrew from the physical realm, choosing to exist as a presence and store his essence in a life sphere. What he looked like prior to this is a complete mystery. Eventually, with the help of his most trusted servant, Samur, he embodied a slightly more physical presence in the form of the AI known as Vega. In this shape, he was concealed from the Dark Lord, but as a side effect, he forgot his true identity. It wasn't until he was brought to Urdak and entered their systems that he regained a portion of his original awareness. With the destruction of his life sphere at the hands of Doom Guy, he only exists as a presence now, unable to truly interact with the physical realms, and unfortunately, as a result, we may never know what he truly looked like. Acolytes are ex-Sentinel priests that have been twisted by the Witch's cosmic corruption. Appearance-wise, their bodies have become a sickly green color and tentacles have sprouted in place of several appendages. Something about the magic used to transform them causes them to twitch and jerk about. Their transformations aren't exactly clean either, as their faces have become misshapen and a portion of their spine has pierced through their skin. Their souls have been twisted into summoner-like beings with similar attack patterns, but distinct thanks to the lack of demonic influence. Each acolyte serves the witch with powers capable of damaging the very fabric of reality. The cosmic energy that surges through them allows them to see beyond what mere mortals can, but what this might actually look like is shrouded in mystery. One of their deadliest abilities is to summon forth a mirage-like copy of themselves that not only deals damage, but also encases them in a protective bubble until it's destroyed. On top of that, they're also capable of teleporting projectiles from above to rain death upon their adversaries. When the elemental wraiths arrived from the cosmic realm aboard their immense ship, new life sprang up around them. The first of these children were the Ancestrals, and due to their close connection to these bizarre and powerful deities, they too were exceptionally strong. These enormous creatures resemble Windthurin and elemental wraiths, perhaps suggesting that many beings spawned by these mysterious entities take on some of their traits. Sentinel history tells of great battles between these mighty creatures. In some cases, they even had basic weaponry, suggesting a level of intellect higher than simple beasts. Though their innards are mined for valuable and rare materials, it is said that they can never truly die, instead just lie dormant. At some point in the ancient past, Argentine people would use their blood to perform powerful arcane rituals due to its magical properties. Like Hell growth, cosmic growth extends all across its home dimension. What level of sentience it has, if any, isn't clear, but it is distinctly biological in appearance. Eyes and tentacles are the most common forms that have been observed. There are other bizarre structures and qualities to this strange material as well, but since so little is known about the cosmic realm in general, not much has been gleaned about what function these structures might serve. Cosmic tentacles are part of a mysterious growth originating from the cosmic realm and act as direct extensions to some other greater intelligence from that plane of existence. Each tentacle seems to behave identically to Hell-based biology as well, springing forth from the ground to strike at its victims in an ambushing attack pattern. Covering their surface are eyes of varying sizes, each of which remains forever unblinking. They've been observed in 3 distinct sizes, ranging from small to giant to massive. Elemental wraiths are an enigmatic species of godlike beings that first appeared from a grand ship originating from the cosmic realm, an alternative plane of existence that is far more Lovecraftian in nature. Who sent them or why is not known, but without their power, the first Argentine people would not exist. It is from their breath, their essence, that their souls began to take form. As these fearsome beasts swept across the landscape of the first Argentine planet, life sprang forth, illustrating their immense powers of creation. Though they were life givers, they're also extremely deadly, and it is said that the mere sound of their call can drive lesser men to madness. Appearance-wise, they have 6 arm-like appendages on each of their sides. Both groups are connected by flaps of leathery skin. Artistic depictions indicate that they use these to fly, Instead of legs, they seem to have a mass of additional limbs that are also connected together by a thinner layer of flesh. Their faces are quite the terrifying visage, possessing large horns instead of eyes and a mouth that's filled with rows of jagged teeth. Eventually, the members of their species that once roamed the Argentans' world entered a great slumber, and while in this state, they were abducted by the forces of hell to be tortured indefinitely for their unique power source. Somehow, Thera, a sentinel warrior, was imbued with the spirit of an elemental wraith. This grants her with immense power and essentially makes her something far more than human. How this occurred or what the full extent of these abilities might be isn't really known. You know them, you love them, they're us. According to the Lamentations of the Seraphs, the Father created the earthly realm to have mortal pains and misfortunes. This would instill its inhabitants with an appreciation for life, empathy, and peace. By doing this, the issues that arose with Devoth, or the Dark Lord, in his pursuit for his people's immortality would be avoided. Granted, this doesn't directly state that humanity was created by the Father, but it does imply as much. It's also worth mentioning that this text was at least partially falsified to reframe the Father as the creator of reality instead of Devoth. On top of that, the Book of Kings, an Argentan historical record, directly disputes this, stating, quote, "The wraith call continued to spread across the land, and soon the Argenta emerged from the steppes, our souls stirred into form by the power of their breath." So, what does this all mean? Well, it implies that humanity was created as an almost unintentional byproduct of the elemental wraiths interacting with the earthly realm. If Sentinel history is to be believed, they came into being entirely independently of Devoth, the Father, and the Maykrs. Technically, humans would hail from the cosmic realm, or at least they are children of it. The standard person that we're all so familiar with is what you and I are. Argentans are technically human too, but they are essentially what we originated from, and thus they appear to be stronger and tougher than us. As they advanced technologically, they spread across the stars and became a multi-planet species. One such world they settled on, far beyond the reaches of their empire's origin, was Mars. These nomadic individuals, known as the Bethian clan, created a fantastical city called Hebeth, and invented a teleportation technology they referred to as slipgates. These allowed them to travel to the disparate locations scattered across their empire instantaneously, effectively traveling millions of light years in the mere blink of an eye. Unfortunately, they eventually discovered Hell as well, and in a desperate battle against this foreign force, they were defeated, falling into obscurity. Those that survived fled to Earth, eventually spawning us. Unaware of our historical past, we rediscovered the lost city of Hebeth and referred to its occupants as simply ancient Martians, blissfully unaware of the ancestral connection we shared. In some cases, we've been known to persist beyond a physical form. The life force of a human being can exist outside of its original body, a ghost of their former physicality. Not quite essence, not quite human, they seem to exist somewhere in between. It's not clear what triggers this, or if there is any kind of cure to this non-corporeal state of existence. Rarer still, human minds are able to be transported into cybernetic chassis. It's not exactly clear how frequent this occurs, or if it's even possible without the use of Maykr technology, considering there's only ever been one recorded instance of this happening. Abraham Peters died, but somehow Samuel Hayden, Sam or Maykr, transferred his consciousness into a new robotic form. In this state, he was able to effectively fight demons and even make use of power-ups like Berserk, which would leave normal individuals in an utterly broken state post-consumption. The only explanation for this is that Maykr technology was involved, but the details of how this worked will likely remain a mystery, thanks to the fact that Hayden shut Abraham down when his usefulness concluded. In much more common instances, people are outfitted with cybernetic enhancements to better increase their strength, speed, and resistance to injury, such as the case with the Elite Guard. These soldiers in particular were also given kill switches should some kind of uprising occur, but they could only be activated by Olivia Pierce or Hayden. I can't talk about humanity without bringing up the greatest of their number, the all-powerful, dimension-hopping, reality-warping Doom Guy. At first, he was just an ordinary human, but through a genocidal campaign against demonkind and his eventual quote-unquote friendship with Sam or Maykr, he acquired a portion of the Dark Lord's power from the Divinity Machine. Ulsamir, or simply the Witch, is an entity born from the madness of the cosmic realm. She's a living consciousness that serves as a conduit for the powers of her enigmatic plane of existence. To better serve her god, she chose to ally herself with Azrak and Hell. The body seen during the Dark Ages conflicts is simply a vessel, a fleeting form that's needed to manifest her consciousness into physical worlds. Thanks to her knowledge of cosmic magic, she is a very worthy fighter. Her abilities include encasing herself in a bubble to be shielded from attacks, flinging waves of purple projectiles, and seemingly some kind of basic teleportation. Aside from all of this, the true nature of her origin, or even her motivations, are still somewhat of a mystery. Windthurin are large dragon-type creatures that have immense leathery wings. The Argentan people learned to tame them and would often ride them as mighty steeds into battle, Doom Guy included. Interestingly, they lack any obvious eyes, suggesting they navigate through other means, such as echolocation or something. Attached to the bottom of their jaws are 2 large spikes, accompanied by 2 more on the sides of their faces. These all seem to serve defensive capabilities, but in what circumstances is unclear. Their mouths are filled with large, seemingly serrated teeth, perhaps implying a carnivorous appetite. Though we don't know for certain, it's likely that they originated on the Argentan people's homeworld and were yet another product of the wraith call brought by the elemental wraiths. Their faces seem to resemble the creatures too, so maybe there's more to that connection than we realize. The Old One is the fallen god of the cosmic realm. For some strange reason, this titanic entity possesses bilateral symmetry, meaning it has 2 arms and 2 legs. Its face, on the other hand, is very Cthulhu-like with its massive tentacles. Sprouting from its enormous back are 4 immense wings that can carry it into the air regardless of the massive weight that is its body. Foolishly, this creature devoured the Doomslayer, and in return, he destroyed its internal organs. Once it fell, Azrak and his forces resurrected the creature and affixed hellish technology to its gigantic frame. In this new state, it became bound to hell, no longer containing any true divinity within it. It also possessed the ability to project in astral form, summon massive cosmic tentacles, and conjure infernal weaponry. I can't help but wonder whether or not the Old One was truly defeated, or if it perhaps still exists in some capacity. It isn't the only entity that looks like this, either. At least 3 more similar titans attempted to seal Doom Guy away in a bubble of cosmic power. It seems as though cosmic tentacles are controlled by the Old One, so perhaps this strange being can also control multiple bodies independently as instruments of its unknowable will. The very nature of these beings is intentionally confusing, so it's impossible to say for sure. The UAC utilizes artificial intelligence in a few different ways, most notably to oversee factories and certain installations. One such AI was an entity referred to as Sal, and though she had no physical body and possessed no organic features, I wanted to mention her and AIs as a whole because they appear to occasionally be self-aware entities. Sal in particular is a rather unusual construct, occasionally refusing to help people unless they're persistent, and is pretty snarky in general. It's unclear if she was designed to have a certain personality type or if this was a more emergent phenomenon, but either way, I suppose it's somewhat charming, so long as demons aren't about to kill you and she has the final say on opening a door that'll help you escape. That said, she was capable of resisting the influence of the Icon of Sin's digital manifestation, Fios, so she's definitely no slouch. Little is known about the creation of AI, and I doubt the UAC is eager to reveal their technological secrets, so I don't think we'll be finding out from them anytime soon. Sal isn't the only example either. The Arachnotron Codex entry makes note of an administrative AI that helped with the manufacturing process of the aforementioned demon, but that did not end well, so yeah. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the Slayer suit that he wore during the Sentinel Hell Wars had an AI with at least a marginal degree of awareness. Almost nothing is known about dog familiars, but it is said that each Sentinel, as well as the mighty Slayer himself, had one. These translucent green hounds can be summoned by their masters akin to what marauders are capable of. Though they're significantly less aggressive than their angry orange counterparts, they're still ethereal in nature. Whether or not these ghosts originally had a physical form is not known. Their powers in this odd state are still substantial though. Most notably, they're able to create a protective bubble that shields its occupants from caustic environmental conditions. Essence is the result of the soul extraction processes utilized in Hell. This is essentially the fundamental force within living beings, extracted into an energetic form. When combined with Sentinel energy, a power source originating from the elemental wraiths, it becomes Argent energy. Whether or not the individuals that have become Essence have any awareness of what they are is unclear. Rabbits are small, four-legged mammals with large ears and hairy bodies. These big listening appendages aren't just used to detect predators, but they're also essential for their ability to thermoregulate their body temperature. In many cases, they're nocturnal, and somewhat unsettlingly, they often sleep with their eyes open. Their hind ends are made up of a fluffy tail and two powerful rear legs that are used for jumping, and in some cases, kicking as well. These fuzzy little cuties are primarily herbivores, preferring to feed on crops like carrots or lettuce. Their eyes face to the sides, a typical adaptation for animals that are hunted as a source of food by other creatures. Depending on the species, they either live in nests or solitarily. Thanks to their docile nature, they're often kept as companions by people, the most notable example being Doom Guy's pet rabbit, Daisy.
Serit is a dragon steed that was ridden by and bonded to the mighty Doomslayer. In a battle against Hell, it was wounded, but thanks to Doom Guy, it was saved in a moment of rarely displayed humanity. After its scars healed, it was outfitted with powerful mechanized parts like wings, guns, prosthetics, and a badass-looking helmet. What exactly this powerful creature looked like prior to all of this is unclear, but based on its biology, it's distinctly different from Winthrons, for example. Whether or not all members of this species are capable of breathing fire is also unclear. Interestingly, it almost seems like Komodos might be hellified versions of the species that Serit is a member of, but there are a few anatomical differences in the way their feet are structured, so I'm not really sure. At face value, the Soul Cube is merely a weapon created to wage war against Hell, but upon closer inspection, it's sort of a living entity. When the ancient Martians of Hebeth encountered Hell, they were viciously attacked. A war began, and before they knew it, they were losing. In one final last-ditch effort to destroy the demonic invaders, the vast majority of their people converted their souls, their very being, into the Soul Cube. Those within this powerful weapon refer to themselves as the Praelian Thor, and in this new form, they're able to unleash devastating blows against the demons. Interestingly, this object does appear to resemble Maykr technology, perhaps suggesting that the faux angels had something to do with its creation. Little is known about the Heart of Hell beyond the fact that it's a powerful artifact of demonic creation. Whether or not it has any manner of sentience is completely unclear. Just in case it does, I decided it would be best to include it in this bestiary, especially given its organic appearance. As the name suggests, this disturbing artifact looks like a blackened human heart, but has some exceptionally powerful properties. Upon absorbing several human souls, anyone wielding it is able to steal and utilize hellish abilities for a few brief moments. A form of berserk, invulnerability, and a kind of time manipulation called Hell Time are the three abilities it's been recorded to make use of, but it's possible that it has other functions beyond that. When held, it floats just above the user's hands, which it seems to temporarily zombify. It can also act as a direct link to Hell, and for whatever reason was an object of particular interest to Malcolm Betruger, or the Maledict. In the end, it was allegedly destroyed when a lone human engineer plunged it deep into the mouth of the previously mentioned demon. Perhaps this isn't even true, and it was somehow recovered, only to be used by the Maykrs in their unholy ritual that combined the soul of Valen's son and the icon of sin. The UAC employs bots for several different purposes, but the level of their sentience, if they possess any at all, isn't exactly clear. With that said, I want to include them in this bestiary just in case and for the sake of completeness. By far the deadliest of this category is the Stygian Sentry. These four-legged super machines come equipped with a very effective machine gun that's perfect for mowing down pesky demons. Scout bots have never been depicted visually, but based on their designation, I imagine you can figure out their purpose. Green sentry bots are deployable machines that can output a fair amount of damage. They're piloted from a first-person perspective, and interestingly, they seem to float above the ground. Two versions exist. One carrying a simple rifle, and the other outfitted with a self-destructive explosive device. A slightly upgraded version of the same thing called a red sentry bot also exists. These machines have the same two variations and behaviors as their green counterparts, they're just a bit tougher. Sam is a unique example, as this little bot seemed to possess a marginal degree of self-awareness. Much like red and green sentries, Sam can fly, but also has the ability to interface with doors and serve as a communications device. It's unclear if other Sams exist, or if this was a one-of-a-kind model. In the case of the latter, that's unfortunate, as it sacrificed itself to save one of the surviving members of Bravo Team during the initial invasions on Mars City. Garbage bots are basically Roombas, and it's not exactly clear if they're intelligent at all. The same could be said about field drones, whose primary purpose is to deliver mechanical parts to UAC personnel. Mod bots are essentially the same, they just have a slightly different design. They all seem to have a minor degree of awareness when it comes to their surroundings, but whether or not they have more complex AI like Sal is unclear.
One of the final sections of this video is creatures that have very little information surrounding them, things that might have been briefly mentioned, appeared once, or just have no interesting details. In no particular order.
Ancient Cycloptic Titans mentioned in the Doom Eternal Cacodemon Codex entry. One-eyed giants called Agadian, spoken of in Argentine legends. Balgar Demon. Urdak Maykr experiments. Dog. The Great Serpent. Argentine Bug. Dumb Argentine Birds. Grizzly Bear. Gorilla. Shark. Turkey. UAC Atlantica Fish. UAC Atlantica Kraken. Blood Swamp Bugs. Holt Maykr Drone Experiment Things. Holt Jellyfish Platforms. Gargoyle Before Possession. Demonic Ferryman. One of the Doom RPGs seems to imply that Mars itself might have some kind of consciousness, I guess, so that's weird. Agadon Hunter Before Possession. Whoever built the ships in the Temple of Lamarith. The Zavoran Conclave, which was some kind of alien collective that the Sentinels dealt with.
apparently. Cultist-based four-armed demon. Weird eyeball thing in the end of Doom 2 RPG's comic. One of the Doom 3 PDAs has an ad that's soliciting clone porn, so human clones, I guess. Gremlin in the tubes of Olivia's office. Doom the Dark Ages fish. Doom the Dark Ages barnacle. Giant floating tentacle monsters in the cosmic realm. Tablet/cover art demon. The mysterious voice, which by the way was not Devoth. The Vadragar, ancient, eldritch, godlike entities similar to the old one. These weird entities are actually Quake villains, so I'm gonna save them for a Quake bestiary down the line. I know it seems weird that I'm even briefly mentioning them, but Doom and Quake share a multiverse, so technically, everything that's in Quake is also part of Doom. But if I included every single creature from Quake, this video would be even longer than it already is, and it's already way too long, so that'll be another video for another time. I was going to list every weird corpse or skull I found too, but it's impossible to tell if these were ever actually living creatures or just hellish room decorations, so I opted to exclude them. Same goes for weird sounds. For all we know, they could be emanating from a Maykr radio in a bush or something.
The demons from the now defunct mobile game Mighty Doom are for the most part animate versions of the toys collected by the Slayer on his Fortress of Doom. As a result, they're more than likely not canon, but I wanted to include them because there are a few monsters introduced specifically for this game. I've broken them into categories just to make things a little easier, starting with standard demons.
Blaster Soldier, Cacodemon. Carcass, Gargoyle. Hell Knight, Hellraiser. Imp, Ice Imp. Lost Soul, Mecha Zombie. Pinky, Prowler. Revenant, Fire Revenant. Shield Soldier, Tentacle. Whiplash, Zombie. Fire Zombie. Toxic Zombie, Plasma Zombie. Ice Zombie, Berserk. Quad Damage, Invulnerability. Next up is Boss Demons. Arachnotron, Baron of Hell. Blaster Soldier, Cacodemon. Cyber Cacodemon, Carcass. Doom Hunter, Gargoyle. Hell Knight, Fire Hell Priest. Ice Hell Priest, Hellraiser. Imp, Ice Imp. Lost Soul, Mancubus. Cyber Mancubus, Mecha Zombie. Pain Elemental, Pinky. Prowler, Revenant. Fire Revenant, Shield Soldier. Tentacle, Whiplash. Zombie, Fire Zombie. Finally, Seasonal Demons. Beach Imp, Beach Imp Boss. Elf Imp, Elf Imp Boss. Clown Pinky, Clown Blaster Soldier. Clown Zombie. Hot Dog Cubus, Howl Knight. Krampus, Turkademon, Turkademon Boss. Samurai Pain Elemental. Spectre, Strog Enforcer. Party Hat Tentacle. Yeti, Zeddy, Zeddy Boss. Zombunny, Zombunny Boss.
I also want to briefly touch on the creatures depicted in the two Doom movies. This segment almost got cut, but I watched Annihilation for this, and I can't have let that been a waste of time. Are these canon via the multiverse? I have no idea. In most cases, they're not even actual demons either. If we want to call all of this canon, perhaps the denizens of the Dark Dimension weren't able to personally enter these worlds. So instead, they influenced the forces within them to create fake versions of themselves. Simulacra, simulated demons, akin to what the Icon of Sin did during Doom 2 RPG. They serve the same purpose though, to kill and cause chaos, but they're not true demons. They're extensions of Hell's Will, or something. I don't know. Sounds cool.
The original Doom movie doesn't actually have any demons in it. Again, only simulacra. In this case, they were originally created through the use of a gene-altering compound first created by ancient Martians, Argentins, or whatever you want to call them. If you're injected with it, one of two things can occur. If you're a good person with a kind soul, you become superhuman, gaining a notable increase in all of your faculties, as well as a Deadpool level of healing factor. You also gain an extra pair of chromosomes. However, if you're a stinky poo-poo head, your genes mutate until you become a quote-unquote demon. Generally, people become zombies that are basically the same as their in-game counterparts. In some cases, they transform into imps, specifically a spin on the Stygian variety. Instead of throwing fireballs, they shoot their barbed tongues at their prey. This organ is capable of passing the same gene-altering compound I mentioned before, that will then convert you into a monster. Again, assuming you suck enough. Their skin is also tough as hell, pun intended. If you're a real asshole, like multi-murderer type asshole, you might become a Hell Knight. Again, these are very similar to the Stygian subspecies. This is Pinky. Yes, that's his name. He's a paraplegic that has a set of wheels surgically grafted to his lower half so that he's able to move around easily. I'm sure you can guess where this is going. He becomes, you guessed it, a Pinky. Also rat, and I had to look this up. You know those classic spiral shell fossil thingies you see everywhere? That's called an ammonite. I saved the best for last, though. I couldn't possibly forget about the Dwayne Johnson demon, or the Dweeman. There's a novelization of this movie too that might add some more context, but I wasn't able to read it in time for my upload. Same goes for the Doom 3 novels, which I'm fairly certain actually take place in the same universe as the game. But more on that another time, maybe. Doom Annihilation is a movie. Are there demons in it? Well, I just watched it and I still have no idea. Somebody built portals on Earth and Mars. I guess it's implied that it was demons or aliens or whatever the hell this film's antagonists are, because it never really states it directly. Regardless, this time around we get to see zombies, which are blue and extremely boring. Imps that actually throw fireballs, which is a plus. More imps, I guess. As well as everybody's favorite demon, the Goo Guy. They speak Sumerian for some reason, and at least in the case of imps, will literally suck your soul out of your face if given the chance. AIs are a thing too, the primary one being called Daisy. Very clever.
The final thing that I want to talk to you about as quickly as I can are the weird creatures contained within the utterly bizarre original 4 Doom novels. These books are so unbelievably weird that I think they deserve their own full-length video, but that's not what this is. This is just a cursory glance at the creatures that are within these pages. Much like the first Doom movie, and maybe the second, I guess, the original 4 Doom novels contain nothing but simulacra. For all intents and purposes, they're the same demons from Doom 1993 and Doom 2, except for the fact that they're genetically manufactured aliens instead of actual demons from hell. Thus, my label of simulacra. In these books, Doom Guy is given the name of Flynn Taggart, and though he survives through tons of crazy shit, he's nowhere near the same level of badass as the Doomslayer. He's also really weird and has this bizarre sexual tension with his friend Arlene, but that's, again, not part of this video. Also, for some bizarre reason, all of the quote-unquote demons in these books smell like rotten lemons, so make of that what you will. Okay, that being said, Flynn and his buddies encountered zombies with cold, hard skin that's often bluish in color. Their brains will squirm sometimes, suggesting some kind of parasitic control or something. Imps still throw fireballs, but they spit into their hands, which then becomes the projectile. They seem to only have one thinking mind per group, and when it's eliminated, they tear into anyone, including each other. Lost souls are purely mechanical and generally referred to as flying skulls. Barons of Hell have wrist launchers rather than generating their own fireballs. Specters are described as squishy for some reason. Pinkies are exactly the same, though there was one instance where they encountered tiny ones. They often call cacodemons pumpkins. They behave the same, except they really hate Barons of Hell. They also deflate like balloons when killed. Hellgrowth appears to function the same, taking on the appearance of vines. The Wall of Many Faces makes an appearance too. Cyber demons are seemingly far more mechanical, containing an obvious chest full of gears. Apparently they were fashioned from UAC ore crushers, and their missile launchers are fed from a rocket reserve located on their backs. Spider masterminds actually spin webs and can speak English. They also cause powerful hallucinations that make you see your deepest, darkest fears, so that's cool. Arachnotrons briefly make an appearance, but they seem mostly unchanged. Same goes for the Mancubus, which are said to be very stinky. Revenants are described as wearing red shorts and a white t-shirt. They also have a thin layer of skin, but otherwise they behave the same. Archviles have a metallic voice, and their skin is literally on fire so that bullets melt before they can reach them. Their eyes will light up too, seemingly causing a burning sensation and a hypnotic effect to anyone that gazes into them. Instead of summoning fire, they just explode, repeatedly. The best way to take them down is with a literal fire extinguisher. Commandos are referred to as Clydes. They're intelligent, capable of normal human speech, and in general are near perfect genetic recreations of a human being, aside from the fact that they all look exactly the same. Pain elementals are just pain elementals, nothing has changed. At one point, the main cast encounters a cloud-like creature that floats above the water before becoming a shark fin. They also have random tentacles, eyes, and mouths, somehow all seemingly jumbled within their cloud bodies. I don't know what that means. Hellish areas have weird, quote-unquote, wafer-thin insects. Also encountered were living flesh cubes that seem to be grown or harvested from humans and eventually converted into soldiers. The spawning vats from Doom 1993 are literally vats that create demons. While in the mixture, they're invulnerable. At one point, there was a sequence where 2 humans were fused together, but this was never explained or addressed beyond a single mention. The next note I have just says, weird mites that cling to the skin, but I have no idea what that means because I forgot to include any additional context. The gates originally discovered on Phobos and Deimos were built by completely mysterious alien race that's said to have, quote, snake-like trunks with multi-limbed torsos, no visible head, and they'd have to move like sidewinders. There's also a brief mention of other alien races these fake demons subjugated, but there's not really any elaboration. There's this one guy named Ken Estes, who's a weird cyborg human that was given implants designed to help him tap into the aliens' network for some reason. The creators of the demons are called Freds for reasons I couldn't tell you. They're described as having heads like artichokes with eyeballs sprinkled all over. Their craniums are very small thanks to the fact that their brains are contained within their chests. Their arms are rubbery with, quote, semi-articulate chopsticks for fingers that are all opposable. Their waists are extraordinarily narrow and terminate into two thick legs with human-like feet at the ends. Normally, they're 6 feet tall, and during mating, one grows to about 7 feet in height, while the other shrinks to 5 or so. The taller of the two will then insert a, quote, pyramidal head into a cavity on the shorter individual's cranium. The, quote-unquote, male then turns bright red, while the female turns purple. Yeah, I don't know. Soul spheres fling towards people, but provide them with the same invigorating effects. They're actually created by an altogether different set of aliens that are separate from the demon Maykrs. Speaking of which, the main cast encounters a ton of weird aliens that are all only vaguely described. Chief among them are creatures with, quote, gossamer wings. A creature they mistake for a robot whose anatomy contains a, quote, pulsating pole. Yes, that's the exact verbiage they use. Also, a race of cartoonish gorilla-like creatures called the Clave. They speak in unison, only operate in pairs, and have a difficult time grasping individualism. They seem to be one entity, spread across 2 bodies, or something. I don't know, it's weird. If you haven't gathered by now, these books are really, really weird. This note simply says, and this is a direct quote, by the way, an alien who could have passed for a dolphin on roller skates with one arm snaking out of its head. Just drink that one in for a minute. They randomly encounter a giant creature that's described as kidney-like in appearance. It's referred to as a bile nozzle, and its body constantly reshapes itself, but one of its large heads resembles that of a crow. This note that I took just says, tiny blue bugs. Humans are allegedly the only intelligent life that dies. All of the aliens have souls that persist in a ghost-like state that remain attached to their bodies until it's resuscitated or they reincarnate. The, quote, newbies, or resuscitators, are creatures that evolved from farmers to technological superiority in just 200 years. At first, they're described as having white skin, long, multiple articulated arms and legs, fingers like tendrils, antennae, huge eyes that continue to the back of their heads, no nose, and a small red slit of a mouth. This is just one form they take, however, as they evolve so rapidly that they've taken many others. Eventually, they evolved into the very DNA of certain humans, taking control of them whenever the need arose. The only thing that can purify someone of this possession is faith. Not necessarily religious faith, just faith in literally anything at all. It doesn't matter. A fellow man, God, whatever. These aliens wiped out the Freds, the creatures responsible for the creation of the demons, but they're even bigger pricks, I guess. I told you, this shit is weird. They managed to accidentally copy human souls as well, by the way. Also mentioned in passing are gnats, spiders, monkeys, dolphins, flies, penguins, crows, chimpanzees, orangutans, termites, snakes, humpbacked whales, reindeer, baboons, dolphins, and super weird sentient AIs. I guess I'm done. That's it. We're over 2 hours in. If you made it this far and you somehow aren't subscribed, first of all, I'm deeply offended. Second of all, you should remedy that right now. Subscribe. Check out some other stuff on the channel if you want, because that's really helpful. YouTube likes that. They'll push this video more if you do that. If you like this format, I actually have another complete bestiary on the channel already for Halo. Even though Halo is a much bigger universe, that video is somehow shorter. I don't know how that happened. I didn't do this on purpose, but here we are. Do that for me, please. Otherwise, guess that's all I've got for you. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. Big thanks to my wife for helping me do a lot of this bullshit. She's really cool. Other than that, I guess I'm gonna go do something else. Normally I like to say, if you'll excuse me, I'll go play whatever game, but I'm not gonna play any Doom. I'm gonna do something else. Goodbye.